To order the September 1st, 2022 regular meeting of the Hendersonville City Council. We begin our meeting with a silent invocation for people to pray or meditate as they choose, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll rise, please. If you'll join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. There are lots of seats on the other side. Okay. We open up with about 15 minutes of public comment time. I have the list of 5 people signed up. I also have 7 digital comments. Is there anyone online who wishes to make public comment?
We have one hand raised right now, Mayor.
Okay. We're going to have to limit this to 1 minute per person because it takes a little time for people to come up and down again. And I think everyone is discussing the same topic. So, so you really don't have to repeat. Just make your comments, and then we will go right on to the next person. Stephen Trombley? Yes. And if you would give your name and your address for the clerk's record, please. Come to the microphone here.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Trombley. I live at Park Place Trail in Hendersonville. I'll just read mine since I'm probably faster. I worked in the construction trade for over 42 years, and I'm now retired, and I do enjoy pickleball along with a lot of my other colleagues that are here tonight. We all enjoy pickleball. I would like to thank you for seeing our needs of your residents for pickleball. I would also like to thank Mark, which I don't see here tonight, for his efforts and hard work in presenting to the council our needs. I was able to watch the meeting on the 4th of last month and would like to share with you what I think pickleball players are looking for in courts. Because pickleball does not have seasons like football or baseball or basketball, we want to enjoy pickleball year-round.
Okay, and that is your 1 minute. I'm sorry.
On that note,
Okay,
I want to cover courts.
Next one, Deborah, is Romania? Romaine. Okay.
Hi, I'm the USA Pickleball Ambassador for Henderson County. I live at 127 North Mapleton Drive. I basically am here and hoping that we do get some additional courts at Patton Park. 4 would be nice, 8 would be better. Something covered would be great because, as he said, we do play year-round. And my group, the cutoff is if it's 40 degrees or warmer and the wind's less than 10 miles per hour, we're playing. Okay? Conversely, in the summer, it's not as nice because when it gets up into the 80s like today, with the sun beating down on you, it's hard to keep going, especially as I get older. I would ask you to think really big, though, and go beyond what might just fit at Patton and see if there's any possibility of a joint venture with the county to bring in a really regional class facility. The one that I know has been mentioned is Opelika, Alabama. It is wonderful. You can play all day, rain or shine. Metal structure over the top that has an open air field, but a canvas top. It's a beautiful facility. If you haven't looked at it, please do. Thank you.
Thank you. Krishna Das. Krishna Das.
Hi, I'm Krishna Das in Hendersonville, North Carolina, and I just want to present it from a multi-age discipline. Hendersonville High School taught both of my sons pickleball. They're now 30 and 33. It's become a fantastic family fiesta and a little bit competitive, as you can imagine. And I just think it's a great thing for all ages. It's a very gracious sport and forgiving for any physical ability. I think you can really attract a lot of good investments. I think it'd be fantastic to have a tournament. How about at Apple Fest to have a apple and pickles tournament? I mean, yeah, you're right. You like that? Think of the income that it would bring to our local merchants, our restaurants, our hotels, etc. So I think it's a great financial, social, civic, and physical investment. Thanks.
Thank you. Sharon Gordon.
Good evening. Sharon Gordon, Hendersonville. I thought it would be helpful for the council to have some actual numbers. So what we did was sign in after the last meeting every day that someone was playing pickleball. As I'm sure you're aware, the rec center is utilized by many various activities and functions. On Monday, at its maximum, the rec center can accommodate 3 pickleball courts. On Monday and Wednesday, there are only 2 courts available from 9 to 11 a.m., then 3 courts from 11 to 2. On Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, there are 3 available courts from 9 to 2, and on Saturday, 9 to noon. The numbers that we came up with are 24 a day, 24 people a day, and that's conservative because we don't have numbers for Saturday, and a lot of people forget to sign in. On heavy participation days, we agreed to lower the game score in order to reduce waiting time for other players. Finally, I know that...
That is your 1 minute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The last name is Jones. Is it Al?
I've always wanted to do that. My name's Al Jones, and I've been playing pickleball for 2 years now.
Your address? Address?
Oh, 4037 Little River
Thank you.
Road, Hendersonville. You know, you go ahead and you guys are all in your 30s and 40s. You know, pickleball players are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and we need something to do, and we play a lot of pickleball. You know, it keeps us in shape, it keeps us out of the medical facilities, and that's important for us. And I think the more people that go ahead and play pickleball, the better this town will be. I mean, there's no question about it. And we all love playing pickleball. And we're seeing it from, there's 5 or 6 million people playing a day. They say in 8 years, there are going to be 40 million people playing pickleball. How many people are going to be playing? It's a sport that is not going to go ahead and go away. We'd love to have your support. Thank you.
Thank you. The person who is seeking recognition online, please.
Lynn, you've been unmuted. Lynn, you've been unmuted.
Williams, Chadwick Avenue. Today I wanted to speak about Boyd Park. We're coming down to the wire here, and we really need your cooperation and compromise on preservation of Boyd Park. I asked you that since I met with Mr. Conant and the architect a year ago, what has actually changed in the design since the petition of 2,000 people, since the HPC, the Historic Preservation Commission's letter to you, since the public meeting. When you look at the plans, pretty much nothing has changed. I ask, please compromise with us. Let's see, 20 people for feedback of that public meeting also isn't adequate enough for 17,000 residents, so I ask you to get more feedback. If you appointed the Historic Preservation Commission, but if you're going to ignore them, they should be renamed to the Historic Decimation Commission. My concern with the Cedars project that's been updated is I feel like it's a slap in the face to all the citizens and residents. There's going to be absorbent unit prices and now Airbnb rentals, which is exactly what the council was promised would not happen when we did the public hearing. Tamara Peacock's the same person on this project. How do we know that this isn't going to happen with the mastermind? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. The digital comments that I have received, again, I'll only read no more than a minute of each one. First one is, let's see here, from Anita Das. Is that someone different? Okay. That was a Dennis Justice, 31 Tamas Lane, Fletcher. This is very long. I will only read 1 minute of it. My name is Dennis Justice of Fletcher. I'm grateful that you are considering dedicated pickleball courts. As you may be aware, I started a group 4 years ago called Blue Ridge Pickleball in support of a regional pickleball complex in Henderson County. The video I had of the wonderful facility in Griffin, Georgia has thousands of views worldwide, and the petition I had online drew hundreds of signatures. A serious family matter focused me to drop out of the scene. I need to give my insight as my background is unique to the issue. If I'm not there tonight, please consider that I am on a memorial trip. Affordable recreation is a necessity to address a statewide adult obesity rate of 33%. I don't like the idea of coveting other recreational components unless they're completely unused, like the racquetball courts were. And that's the end of that comment. Next, Jeff and Robin Hayes, 217 White Ash Circle, Hendersonville. I encourage the council to increase the number of usable pickleball courts in the community. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the U.S. and is great exercise for all ages. As seniors, we have really seen improvement in our balance and strength since starting to play this fun and engaging sport. Thank you. Kaylee Wolfers, 48 Black Gum Court, Hendersonville. I am in support of new pickleball courts in Hendersonville. Thank you. Catherine Ulrich, 32 Half Moon Trail, Hendersonville. Thank you for considering building a pickleball facility in Hendersonville. I support having some covered pickleball courts and some with shade structures for people waiting to play. I will use the courts almost daily. Patricia McDuff, 7 North Charles Lane, Hendersonville. I would like to speak in support of the construction of additional pickleball courts within the city of Hendersonville. My husband and I first took up pickleball last October, hitting balls to each other at Jackson Park. Because we didn't have anyone to play with and we belonged to the Henderson County Welcome Club, I started a pickleball activity group with club members. Today we have over 60 Welcome Club members who've expressed an interest in pickleball. They vary from waiting to learn the sport to playing regularly. I worked with our Henderson County USA Pickleball Association ambassador, Deb Romaine, to designate specific times at the Henderson County Athletic and Activities Center gym for beginner or growing in skills pickleball players. The staff was designated those times, improving and paying it forward players. That's that one. And then Susan Wellbrand, 231 Northwoods Trail, Hendersonville, is one of many avid pickleball players in Henderson County. I am always looking for a place within the county to play that is A, open to the public play after work hours, B, preferably indoors or shaded from the sun, wind, and rain, C, doesn't require an additional club membership. I wholeheartedly support the renovation and 12 additional covered courts in Patton Park. Covered options are rare in Henderson County, especially those available to people working regular business hours. Okay, that is all of that. And speaking of the health of it, My sister-in-law broke her shoulder playing pickleball, so it's not always healthy. She's still undergoing physical therapy.
Oh, my gosh.
So, okay. Consideration of the agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to have added to the agenda this evening?
Madam Mayor, I would like to add time for discussion after item 6A, Caregivers of Mother Earth presentation.
Okay. Is there anything else anyone would like to have added to or removed from the agenda? Not a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council approve the agenda as amended.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Not, those in favor of the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. We have our agenda. Consent agenda, is there anything anyone would like to have moved from the consent agenda to the regular agenda so it can be discussed? Not, a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there any discussion? Not, those in favor of approving the items on this consent agenda say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, and that takes care of several pages. All right. Presentations. Ellie Travis, Caregivers of Mother Earth.
I'm Ellie Travis, 726 West St. John's Way, Hendersonville, North Carolina. And thank you all for your service. Really appreciate Hendersonville. It's a great place to live, and I've lived in some other cities that aren't quite as great. My background, I've always been a pioneer. After I went to college, I was the first woman with 3 or 4 different corporations in roles that were typically for men. And over the years, I have found myself, kind of enjoying being in uncharted waters. And in 2020, I got inspired to do something that I had never done before, and that was to write children's stories. And so I have authored 13 different stories that go from spring, summer, fall, and winter that tell the story of a life in a garden, that help children understand their emotions and help, children get off electronics and get out and play pickleball. Well, I hadn't really thought of that before tonight, but that was a good idea. I like the apples and pickles too. So anyway, I'm here tonight to give a little presentation, and I guess to go forward, I hit the bottom arrow. Is that? Is this
We'll hit
clicker?
the big button.
The big button?
Yep.
Okay.
Is that working for you?
There's something that says admit somebody. Okay. Click on the screen.
There you
Okay.
go.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we'll get started. So I wanted to start with why am I asking Hendersonville to become a caregiver of Mother Earth City? Because of our children. I want Hendersonville to lead the way as the cornerstone or the inaugural city for our children, our children's children, and going out 7 generations. And it's time, if you look at Caregivers of Mother Earth, it spells come. And so I want everybody to come together and get over ourselves as far as all the polarization. This is something we can agree on. Mother Earth, our environment, this is our only planet, this is our blue mother, and our children that are going to be inheriting this beautiful earth. So if we can come together through schools, businesses, city government, everybody, volunteers, to help children understand where does their food come from, edible landscapes, more gardens, things like that. So I'm looking to the city council kind of as our, maybe the spearhead for caregivers in this community. And I'll share a little bit about what we've done this summer. First, let me tell you about a story. This is a true story that took place starting in May. The church that I go to had a fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Club for the 7th Avenue Community Garden. And so we had the tree board there, we had ESB, we had Conserving Carolinas, we had Mountain True, and we also had my little nonprofit, Caregivers of Mother Earth. And I wanted to share a true story about what has happened since that drive-through, since we had the fundraiser. And this letter is from Shaylin Yost Haynes from the Boys and Girls Club, and she said, "Dear City Council members, my name is Shaylin Yost Haynes, and I'm the Workforce Development Director at the Boys and Girls Club of Henderson County. This year, the Boys and Girls Club introduced a Garden to Table program for our teens that focused on teaching students how to grow and prepare their own food. With the help of Ellie and her congregation, we were able to create many traditional dishes, from Mexican rice and prepared peppers to homemade pickles and zucchini bread with a fig jam. Besides the hard work it takes to maintain a garden and the delicious dishes that can be prepared from that hard work, the 7th Avenue Garden has also shown many of the students the joy of being outside and has also helped with some anxiety, stress, and depression. One student said, "Sometimes I just like to take a walk around my neighborhood when I'm not in the garden because it helps me calm down." Another said, "Sometimes I just like to come out here and relax and get away from all the loud noises." This experience has shown the students a lot more than I could have imagined. I'm so proud of them and the community for supporting such an important part in the growth process of young minds. I would love to see this garden continue to grow and educate students of all ages. Although it needs some love, the garden is an ideal place for all community members to take advantage of. A few additions like a gazebo and a new picnic table would shield city residents from the elements and encourage community building. Neighbors would have a bigger gathering space, promoting unity within the community and providing those who visit with an opportunity for environmental education and mental health wellness through this outdoor escape. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Shaylin Yost Haynes. So the revival of the 7th Avenue Garden is something that, you know, the community is ready for. And let's see, I want to play the video that's there. Do I just hit that? There we go. So in just a few short months, we see how getting these 25 children out into nature has helped them in so many ways. Learning how to garden, learning how to cook food, understanding the connection with the earth, and also the help with mental health. So this is just one example of what being a caregiver of Mother Earth could look like, you know, in the future. So, let's see. Oh, thank you. So my request tonight is that Hendersonville become that cornerstone caregivers of Mother Earth City. And would like to have the support of the mayor, the city council, and the Environmental Sustainability Board to kind of be the champions of it in the city. And I would like to see that we have at least 2 action items per fiscal year that work on improving children's connection with nature in our environmental sustainability program. There would be a nominal fee of like $250 that would help us all work together and get a whole lot of support from caregivers of Mother Earth. And I would also like to see signage like Bee City and Tree City with the logo for caregivers in that same area. And the key is really about education, is to educate and communicate everybody in the community about being good stewards of the earth. So the benefits down at the bottom, they'll develop as we really learn how to be a caregiver of Mother Earth. It's a way of life. It's not a program. It's when you see a piece of trash, you go, well, let me just pick it up, you know? And we need to come together regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of ethnicity, everything. We just need to come together for our children and for our Mother Earth. So it's a great opportunity to unite one another. This summer, I worked with 80 children in different farm camps, historic Johnson Farm, Fruitland Farmstead. I was at Bullington Gardens with the 4-H club, and we had all of these children receiving the storybooks that I mentioned at the beginning, as well as a nice little tote bag and a certificate that says, you're an official caregiver of Mother Earth. And those children, it was signed by our mayor, signed by me, and signed by the camp director. And the children are just so proud. I've received letters. I received one last week from a little girl named Avery that was so proud of that, and she sent me a thank you note, and it had at the bottom, she drew a picture of herself, and it says, me, and then she had a hole in the ground in a tree. She says, baby tree, and she's clapping. But anyway, it's just sweet, to see a 6-year-old get so excited about being a caregiver of Mother Earth. So, bottom line, you can be as proud as these children when you say yes to becoming a caregiver of Mother Earth City. So I'm hopeful that we will make that decision. Here's a couple of children that were at the historic Johnson Farm Camp. You can't make this stuff up. The first child's name is Noah, and he was all about the water. Go figure, right? So he had trout all over his vision board. They were working on vision boards of what they wanted to see the earth look like in the future when they were grown up. And he said he was going to be a guardian of the water. And then the next child next to him, again, I'm not making this up, is Solomon. And Solomon only had 3 small pictures on his whole vision board. And I said, Solomon, why so few? He said, because we need more white space. We need more land that's not being built on. And I said, well, you are a wise young man. So, what do we want to see in our future? Do we want to see neighbors helping one another get through hardships? Do we want to, see miracles happen every day? Because this is what's happening in my life. Sometimes I'm on the carpet and sometimes I'm holding on to the fringe watching this thing take off. But let's make every day a day to care for Mother Earth and to care for our children. So I put a couple little quotes here. One is from Leo Buscaglia, who says, to know and not to do is not to know. He also said, and I saw this today, it's paradoxical that many educators and parents differentiate between a time of learning and a time of play without seeing the vital connection between them. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty good. So, when our kids are out playing in nature, they're learning. They're learning about imagination, creativity, they're staying healthy. So, unless if they fall and break their shoulder, but we hope that doesn't happen. So another quote from Thornton Wilder says, we can only be said to be alive in those moments when our hearts are conscious of our treasures. And, our treasure is with our children and with our Mother Earth. So, always remember, you're never too young or too old to dream big. And Lightfeather wanted me to playfully ask you, will you vote yes? And let's dream together. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.
Simpson, you had wanted to make some comments?
Yes, so Ellie is actually going to be having a, I guess, inaugural celebration on September 24th, and she said in her presentation, the mayor will be there, there'll be a proclamation, she's planning a special tree in Patton Park, and a commemorative bench will be there as well. And I really, the more I've learned about her program, obviously I've learned about it before this meeting, but the more I've learned about the program, the more I would really like to see us become that inaugural city for caregivers of Mother Earth. I think it's a program that ESB could certainly get on board with. I know that Ellie came and presented to us several months ago. Was it a whole year ago? September. Oh, boy. And so, you know, they were on board then. So I imagine that they would be ready to jump on board as soon as we decided to sign on. And so I know it is a new program, and I think it would also give us the benefit of sort of helping her craft, what does this look like when a city signs on to be, you know, how many things are you asking them to do? Because we all know that we don't want to ask our staff or ourselves to do too much more. But it's definitely something that ESB could to participate in. So I just wanted to have a quick discussion about it, and hopefully we can decide that we would like to sign on for it.
Okay. Any other comments? You want to make a motion?
I would love to make a motion. Madam Mayor, I move that the city of Hendersonville becomes the inaugural city for caregivers of Mother Earth.
Is there any discussion? Not? Those in favor of Hendersonville signing on, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Okay, there you go. Great. Thank you. Next presentations, we have two proclamations. Come around to the front. And first of all, if you would like to come up, right in the middle here. Okay. Right there. Okay, so I have a proclamation for Literacy Month 2022. Whereas literacy is fundamental in all we do and essential to meeting one's full potential. And whereas literacy is the key to opportunity for individuals and families to increase their life's chances in today's modern world, as literacy is no longer simply just the ability to read and write. And whereas improved literacy skills promote higher income and better health for individuals and families, which in turn also improves quality of life. And whereas solid literacy skills are vital to our community's social and economic development and offer residents expanded opportunities to make substantial contributions to growth, prosperity, and well-being in our city. And whereas the City of Hendersonville supports the literacy outreach organizations offering inclusive, accessible, community-based learning programs to children, youth, and adults in our community. And whereas September is recognized as National Literacy Month throughout the country and is an opportunity to raise awareness of the importance of literacy throughout Henderson County. Now therefore, I, Barbara Volt, Mayor of the City of Hendersonville, do hereby proclaim September 2022 as Literacy Month in the City of Hendersonville and urge all residents of our community to support literacy and literacy programs.
As a nonprofit here, as we all appreciate the support we have from the City Council of Hendersonville and all of its residents. And September 8th is International Literacy Day, and our building is in Patton Park, so we can do literacy and pickleball. So come visit us, but we have some great events planned for the future. You can follow us on Facebook to support literacy in the community. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you,
City Council.
And our next one is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. And Amy? And whoever all wants to come up. My family. Very good. Right on up here. Okay. Right. Whereas the month of September is designated as National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month and serves as an outlet to honor the young lives taken too soon. and as a means to increase public awareness of this disease afflicting children across the United States. And whereas childhood cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in children, with 1 in 285 children in the United States being diagnosed by their 20th birthday. And whereas the average age of diagnosis is 6 years old, compared to 66 years for adult cancers. 80% of childhood cancer patients are diagnosed late and with metastatic disease. And whereas in 2018, 47 children per day, or 17,293 children aged 0 to 19, were diagnosed with cancer in the U.S., more than 95% of childhood cancer survivors will have chronic health conditions as a result of their treatment toxicity, with 1/4 being classified as severe to life-threatening. And whereas approximately 1/2 of childhood cancer families rate the associated financial toxicity due to out-of-pocket expenses as considerable to severe. And whereas in the last 20 years, only 4 new drugs have been approved by the FDA to specifically treat childhood cancer. And whereas recognizing the unique research needs of childhood cancer and the associated need for increased funding is critical to allow healthcare professionals to work diligently, dedicating their expertise to treat and care for children with cancer. And whereas many parents and family members feel terrified and are overwhelmed following a child's cancer diagnosis, therefore, it is important to encourage additional nonprofit organizations at the local and national level to assist children with cancer and their families in coping through educational, emotional, and financial support. Now, therefore, I, Barbara Volk, Mayor of the City of Hendersonville, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2022 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Hendersonville, and I encourage citizens, government agencies, private businesses, nonprofit organizations, the media, and other interested groups to increase awareness of what citizens can do to support the fight against childhood cancer. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you so much for being willing to do this. I know that childhood cancer wasn't on my radar until the day it was. And my daughter, Kalina, she was 5 when she was diagnosed, and she moved to heaven last year at 8. And we were told, we were in treatment here in Asheville because that's the most local place that you go, pretty much all of Western North Carolina. That's the one place you go. And they say, oh, this is the good kind to have. Well, there's obviously no good kind. So now that we're in a different world, everything's changed, just like for every cancer family. It's a time to do something. And I know it's uncomfortable, but 20 years ago, no one knew what pink was. It's time to change that for children and know what gold is. And I encourage everybody just to start doing a little bit of research, digging in a little bit, because I know you have children, grandchildren, and this is going to affect someone they know. It's not that rare. And the sooner we join together and help each other figure out how to raise money for research, because it's just not going anywhere right now, just raise some awareness. Hang up a gold ribbon this month, you know. You don't have to be crazy like me and paint your mailbox gold. But, you know, you could do something simple. If you have some gold Christmas lights, you can do that. Tell your neighbor, you know, that, hey, guess what? This is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. That's sharing, you know. So I really appreciate everybody, and I just want to give a really huge thanks to Angela Reese for doing, if she's not here tonight. No, she's not here. But she really knocked it out of the park, listening to all my emails about this, and doing such a fabulous job that this proclamation is truly the best one, and is going out like all across the country right now, and they're just putting their own name on it, but they're saying, you know, Hendersonville started. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Right. Next, analysis of impediments to fair housing. Mr. Conant, do you want to introduce this?
I'll ask that Mary Roderick with Land to Sky Regional Council of Government to come up and make the presentation. Mary's working with us on our CDBG project and is doing a great job, so we appreciate the support she's providing us. So I'll turn it over to Mary.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and I'm going to try to put my professional hat back on as a mom. That was very moving. My child does not have cancer, thank goodness. Sorry, I didn't realize how emotional that made me. I'm here to talk about things that are typically pretty dry, especially following such compelling presentations. So I'll apologize in advance, but you know, the topic of housing is one that's on everyone's mind and is also very important to well-being to our families. So, and I really apologize for this. I told you I was sleepy. So the analysis of impediments. Another word is barriers, right? And this is one of the things that we're required to do as a part of our CDBG grant. We have to have one of these done. They're supposed to be done every 5 years. The last one that we did was in 2012. That was a regional one, and this time we did one specifically for the city of Hendersonville for this specific grant, for the CDBG NR grant, the 7th Avenue home rehab and sidewalk projects. And we've been working together with Sheila and John and several staff on that project. So this is really an analysis. This is we want to present our results to you. The action is going to happen kind of later down the road, and I'll speak to that as well. Fair housing. I like HUD's poster here. It's more than just words. And the next slide will tell you really what they want us to look at and what we looked at in the full document that you've been provided a draft of. What HUD is concerned about and what they want us to look at within the jurisdiction are, you know, the accessibility of housing to people based on these 7 protected classes. And I will actually note income and source of income are not protected. So a lot of times affordability is one of the things people talk about and are concerned about, but you know, you can tell someone they can't live there if they can't pay the rent you want. There is that ability to do that, but there's a kind of a way that affordability does have a role in this, and I will talk about that in a moment. So the 7 protected classes: race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. And as a landlord, you're not allowed to discriminate on that basis, and as a lender, you're not supposed to discriminate on that basis. And so our job is to look at a jurisdiction's regulations, administrative policies, procedures, and practices, and see if those are affecting location, availability, and accessibility of housing. And so that's kind of agnostic, right? It's just, is housing available? It doesn't get into this protected class topic per se. But then they want us to look at, you know, these conditions, public and private, that are affecting fair housing choice. And some of that does get into kind of lending practices, as well as the availability, and this is where the affordable comes in, because you know, typically there is a difference in access and affordability to people of color, potentially people with disabilities or familial status. They do have it more challenging to find housing, and that's why we're supposed to look at this kind of range of affordable, accessible housing and a range of unit sizes. So I am not going to try to go through all of those findings. The slides are in your packet, but y'all have heard the Bowen report, both the one we did at the 4-county, the 18-county. We know that there's not a lot of housing, either in the for sale or the rental market. These are just some figures about that. So for the sake of time, I'm going to keep going, but I do want to point out that mortgage denial rate, that specifically in Henderson County, people who are not white are anywhere from 1.5 to 3 times as likely to be denied a mortgage. And there hasn't been deeper analysis based on, you know, were those incomplete applications? That information is, you know, on the surface a racial topic, but it could be another topic, of course. But I'm going to come back to that point as one of our action items. In the rental housing market, well, can I go backwards? Oh, no, go backwards. Help me. Sorry. Okay, thank you. I'll go forward. Okay, go one more time because there's a box. Oh, no, okay, so sorry, go back. I apologize. I thought that box was on this one. So the rental housing market, I mean, basically, this was the finding from, again, from the Bowen report in Henderson County, that you just noticed the 0 vacancies in that almost, and the 100% occupancy rate in any of the tax credit or subsidized housing, where, you know, they're completely full. And even market rate, there's pretty high occupancy rate. So this is for the multifamily rental. And multifamily rental is typically what's more accessible to people. So cost burden, again, I've got an orange box around there. We know that you know, a lot of people are cost burden, and this splits it out by renter versus owner. And you know, 46%, almost 47% renter, and a lower number, but you know, still 20% of owner-occupied folks are cost burden. That's spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And then, you know, a smaller amount, but still a good number, are spending more than 50% on their housing. So I said I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on that, but I did, because it really lays the foundation for some of the analysis. And my colleague, Scott Adams, because he had also looked at your zoning for your 160D update, he facilitated this and looked at things like, you know, what are the accessory dwelling unit standards, you know, what about multifamily attached housing, manufactured housing, kind of, this is nitty-gritty zoning stuff that basically, I'm not, again, not going to go into all these details, but the recommendations are that these be reviewed in the context of your comprehensive plan update to see if there are some adjustments that can be made to increase housing supply and therefore accessibility and potentially affordability. Scott did do a nice set of diagrams, and again, this is also in the full report, where he looks at the differences in the requirements for a duplex versus a single-family home. A duplex now requires a larger lot size, but from the space, from the building footprint, that's not really necessary. And he basically just draws out how you could put 2 duplexes in the same footprint as a single-family home. And, you know, something like that would be, well, how much of the city is zoned in a way that does require that additional space, and how many more lots could we create if we change that requirement, and how many more houses could we generate? And of course, there are other things to consider, and you know, traffic concurrency, that was one of the topics that came up at planning and zoning. You know, these are just high level, like, analysis, and certainly to really dig into it is something that you would want staff and, you know, your consulting team and doing your comp plan update to really look at in more detail. So I'm going to skip this one, but you know, this was the conversation we had at the Planning and Zoning Board meeting. You know, are they interested and open to a discussion around potentially changing minimum lot size requirements, potentially looking at ADU changes, accessory dwelling unit changes, allowing more multifamily and manufactured housing in more zones, and any other options to increase housing supply and diversity. And I use that missing middle graphic to show, you know, there's a lot between single family and these mid-rise that, you know, may be too large of a scale for a city of Hendersonville size, but a lot of these kind of more, they've gone out of style, the bungalow apartment, the courtyard apartment, you know, but if you look at older cities, and this one is very old, actually, 175 years. So you probably have some of these typologies in your city, I'm sure you do. But, you know, kind of getting, and it's a question, are developers even going to build these things if you change your zoning? So there's a lot of questions. Our recommendations are, so first I have to list out impediments. This has to go in this report to the state, and then some recommendations. And some of these are flowing into the housing plan that we'll also be executing during this grant. Number one, you know, an impediment is inadequate housing supply, both for sale and rental. And you know, short of building houses yourselves, your zoning can help facilitate more housing. But that's a really, you know, that's an in-depth analysis and a conversation that has to be had with stakeholders, and so that's the recommendation. And within the comp plan update that you have underway, it sounds like that's already being considered by staff to look at options and to just review, you know, what possibilities there will be. So there's going to be more coming on this, right? This is just kind of a high level, just to start. Accessibility, so for people with disabilities, there is some portion that's required when the units are publicly funded. Maybe considering additional incentives to increase the number of accessible units, particularly, as we have an aging population and we have more people who need those accommodations. That would be, another recommendation. Third, the housing finance options, and this is the task that I put on my list to do, is to look at what services for home ownership counseling are already there. How are those targeting specifically people of color and low to moderate income households? And look at how the capacity and outreach could be increased, right? Now, that may not be a step that the city does itself. It may be that there's other, funding resources to support that. I did add, the feasibility of down payment assistance program for low to moderate income households, like our sister up the road is doing. So, that's just something that I'm going to be doing a little more detailed work on and providing that information. This last three, number 4, 5, and 6, this came, the first one, discrimination based on source of rental income and previous eviction history. That came from the conversation with the stakeholder group, the homeless resource team, a number of people in that group saying, people are having problems because of their eviction history, but the eviction history, is based on a number of other problems that may have been resolved, and so, is there a way to help people kind of get out of that cycle? And so that's really working with the nonprofits to evaluate that. So these are less on kind of the city and the city policies and more kind of bigger picture. Lack of transportation is one that was cited, and maybe that it's feasible to implement microtransit. City of Wilson has tried this rather than fixed transit. And again, that's a conversation maybe for the MPO, right? This is not all on the city of Hendersonville to figure out. And then the lack of awareness of fair housing laws, that's a really common one. And that's just part of our regular, strategy to provide more brochures, more trainings. We've already done a couple of trainings in the region, and make sure materials are available in multiple languages. So this is our list, the 6 impediments, the recommendations. This report will go to Commerce, at the Department of Commerce to fulfill our grant requirements, but are also on the table as you go forward with your comp plan update in looking at how to increase housing affordability and supply and hopefully affordability. They don't always equal each other. Of course, you have my contact information, and you're welcome to reach out, as Mr. Smith did today, and we didn't get a chance to talk, but you're welcome to reach out to me after this. Okay.
Questions?
Yes. Can you explain the plan that you mentioned here that the city of Asheville has?
The down payment assistance?
Yes.
Program, so it is restricted, it's income restricted, so you have to earn under 80% of the area median income. And I should know a lot more about this because I looked at it in detail in 2020, but that was 2 years ago.
COVID erased everything.
I did erase my brain.
I'm with you.
So the program is still underway. I believe they were financing it out of their bond referendum. So that, the question of where did the money come from, right? I do believe that was out of the bond referendum. They passed a $25 million bond referendum. I don't know the figures, like how many people have received the assistance, how many people, how have they kind of operated the program over time. So I'd have to, I can certainly provide more information.
Was it like a grant? Like we're going to help you make your down payment, not a loan?
Right. The down payment assistance, because it's serving, there is that, we've been having a lot of discussion around public funds for public good, and that you can't give money to private individuals, but serving people who are considered economically disadvantaged is considered a public good. And there is where HUD, for example, and then the state allows, because not everything the federal government allows is allowed at the state level, but at the state level you are allowed to provide assistance to people under a certain income threshold.
Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions?
So we're basically just presenting that for your information, and we will be sending the documents to the state to satisfy our grant requirements, but also to provide some background for your further work on your comprehensive plan. Okay. All right. Thank you. And again, I apologize for that.
Yeah. That's quite all right.
Emotions are allowed.
Yeah. Okay, discussion of council initiatives to improve housing affordability. Mr. Smith. you want?
Yes, so as I mentioned to all of you in private, I had a great meeting with Ms. Beaker earlier this month about this topic, and we talked about a lot of things, and we got to the end of the discussion, and Ms. Beaker said several times, yeah, I need to do some more research on this, or yeah, I need to do some more research on this. And several of the ideas we talked about were mentioned here, as well as some other ideas that we talked about for ways to incentivize developers to build affordable housing into their plans. And so the purpose of this, why I have this on the agenda, is for the council to give our city attorney the permission to allocate time to look at ordinances that we could enact, change, whatever, that would allow us to put affordable housing into our code of ordinances. I know that we're talking about our comp plan, but a code of ordinance has more teeth in it, and I would think in the long run would have more benefits to it. So my discussion with you is, do we have the willingness as a group to have Ms. Speaker creatively look at these and other things that may exist and come back to us with some ideas for an ordinance that we might want to enact? Did I say that right, Angie? Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay. Comments?
I'm for.
I'll jump
So
in,
for you.
if it's okay. So I participated in the Duke Leadership Forum for 8 months, starting in November of 2021, and then fast forward. And I had intended on doing a presentation to the council when Duke Leadership Forum gave us our, their goal was to provide us with basically an action plan and like a summary of everything that we covered through our 8 months together. So this is the Duke Leadership Forum is a organization of people, and there's different branches of the state. So we were the Western Division that met. John Hood was one of our directors, and Debbie Goldstein, who's the director of the NCLF, and Leslie Winter, who is a past North Carolina General Assembly woman. And so then this group was comprised of a bipartisan group of community leaders. So City of Hendersonville, I was there, Buncombe County, Julie Mayfield from the North Carolina Senate out of Asheville, many leaders from Waynesville, Mars Hill, Tony Floyd, who's the president of Mars Hill College, and he actually said I could use him as an example and tell his story. He still is not able to buy a home because there are no homes in Mars Hill for him to buy. He is the president of the college, so like this is hitting everybody. And so I was able to get a hold of them when I saw this pop on because I wanted to be able to present this information to everyone because it's, we worked together for 8 months and we heard a lot of the presentation that you gave and a lot of the points. And then our goal was how can we increase access to adequate housing? And so this was the presentation that they sent me. And so basically goals were building relationships. And, we were having difficult discussions because this room was people who were on very political spectrums, different political spectrums. And I think what the ultimate goal is that we have difficult conversations and you learn so much from other people. But it was really interesting because we were in this room, regardless of race or politics or party lines, everyone agreed on the same thing, was that we need to do better and we need to do something to kind of move us forward. Can you go? So this was the group of graduates, and then keep going, because I just want to highlight a couple of things. 55% of folks in North Carolina right now who currently use housing vouchers are either elderly or disabled. And when we talk about the need for units, we get a lot of slack here at the City Council for approving more housing units. But according to the Bowen study and the census data, we are still 2,000 units short for what we need today. And so, that ratio of being where we don't have enough drives up the cost. And So, and if you, so these are just some statistics, and anybody can look at this thing, but if you forward, so the beauty of this was that when Jerry mentioned this, was, wanting Angie to be able to look at different ordinance changes, a lot of the things that we did were come up with action items that we thought were feasible, economically feasible, and politically feasible. We had, a North Carolina senator in the room and great attorneys from the UNC School of Government who basically were able to tell us, yes, you can do these things, or no, you cannot do these things. Can you go to the next slide? And then the next one, because I don't want to repeat all the things that you went over. So these are our proposed action items. Develop and implement a broad-based PR strategy to increase public buy-in to addressing housing supply and affordability issues in Western North Carolina. That was one that a lot of people supported because people hear affordable housing and they don't understand that that is your school teacher and your police officer who need affordable housing. And that word gets kind of a negative connotation, but affordable to somebody may not be affordable to you. And so using that term and developing a strategy to communicate to the public what that means is very helpful. Generate funding for infrastructure and capital needs to support increasing housing supply, including state and local bonds are getting permission to use the occupancy tax, which I know that Asheville has done, is continuing to do. They actually are even moving in on discussing TDA money to adequately kind of subsidize some of the housing issues they have there. And the development with the down payment assistance, I learned a lot about that from a friend that I've met through the program on Asheville City Council. And it's basically like a transitional development. So the folks actually start out where they're on public assistance, and then they move through this neighborhood of, hey, the ultimate portion is now that you're moving into this home that you're buying yourself, and we're helping you do. And it's an amazing program, and I think they're having a lot of success with it in Asheville. Increase multifamily, higher density, mixed use, or form-based zoning that will make it easier for developers to build housing. So we've actually talked about form-based code a little bit. I know Lou, and form-based code is basically where we determine on this road, we would like to see this type of form for a multi-use home or housing. And then if we establish that in our ordinance, like Mr. Smith is talking about, then the developers by right are going to be able to produce that exact thing, which is helping them with the process and the money and the permitting and the architecture and planning fees. And it's helping us because we're getting what we want, which is more homes that people can afford to live in. Regional coordination for planning around housing and economic development. So our city manager, John Connett, is on the Regional Housing Consortium. And whereas that group wasn't previously super active, it's significantly more active now because we've identified that we have a major problem. Increase regional capacity to attract state and federal funding for infrastructure and housing. Encourage local governments to subsidize Section 8 and rents, and consider regulation of short-term rentals. So these were all the proposed actions that we determined as a bipartisan group of people that was going to be able to help our communities achieve workforce or homes that they can afford to live in. And so for Angie, since we're asking staff to look at these things, I feel like this is a good way for us to start, because these are discussions that we can all have and say, okay, we like A and B, or, and then we can focus our resources on those types of things. So that is all.
Anyone else?
I mean, I appreciate Jen's idea to use this list as kind of our starting point. I think that helps us hone in the conversation a little bit more. And it is a lot of the things that I think separately with staff and within each other we have talked about. And I know that we are working on the comprehensive plan, but that won't be done for a little while. And like Jerry said, an ordinance change would be much more concrete. And so I would like us to look into these things sooner rather than later.
I said it before, but I guess y'all didn't hear me. So I'm with Jerry on his plan.
Okay, so is there any objection to requesting that the city attorney look into what the possibilities are for Hendersonville?
I have no objection, but I would suggest that we will, as a team, put it together, including our community development staff and city attorney's office and Land of Sky and some other folks. We'll do it together. I think it's going to have to take a team approach as we go.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whoever needs to be on the team.
Right.
Yeah.
But the focus is on ordinances.
Understood.
This is not the comp,
I think C is like,
yeah, focus.
is, yeah.
There's one thing that is not on the list, and is the inclusionary zoning topic. And I don't know if the majority of city council is open to that being studied, but that's one thing that we did spend quite a lot of time talking about, and it is a tool that is being used, and it's not been really tested in court, which is the thing I kept saying I'll have to do more research on. But it can range from, some of these types of things. We talked about some of these types of things too. But it can range from incentive-based inclusionary zoning to encourage more affordable housing to mandating it. And so I just want to make sure that the majority or all of city council is comfortable with investigating that strategy, because it is not on that list. And so I feel like if you're going to take a comprehensive look, that's a huge piece that is not on the list. And so before I go down, this is all 100% able to be done and studied and all of that. The inclusionary zoning is a little bit, you have to get a little bit more creative. It's a little more complicated. And so it's what would take a lot of time. And so before I went down that path, we talked about having city council buy into exploring that, not to approving it, but just exploring what that might look like.
So I will say, we spoke a lot about inclusionary zoning as part of this leadership forum, and it was not one of the action items because there were lots of legal concerns from the state and the General Assembly over inclusionary zoning. Mm-hmm. And then we were presented with some data that was not as promising for inclusionary zoning as you would think it would be. And so it didn't make it on the final list because a lot of people were really uneasy about the topic, just based off of the data. But if we obtain some data and it's, I like to see good numbers or whatever, but if that's what we do, then that's fine. But we talked a lot about inclusionary zoning, and it was not a huge hot topic amongst all of the people. And so I don't know enough about it to say yes or no, but requiring people to do things with their properties gets a little dicey. And so I don't know if we have to research it more before we would say we're going to form some sort of a policy or look into it.
Well, I'll follow it up. I mean, the carrot always works better than the stick.
Yeah.
So if we can create incentives in inclusionary zoning, that was really what we talked a lot about. What would that look like?
Yeah.
How can we create those incentives to developers? So I think it is an important thing to look into, despite the fact that it's not been tested, but, court doesn't scare me. So if we think it's something that we should do, and we think it's fair and, certainly legal based upon the laws now, I think that we should at least look into it to try to, once again, put it into our ordinance so it's part of the way we live in Hendersonville.
And I will say incentives-based is the safest, for sure. As far as density, there's all kinds of incentives that you can consider, and that makes it optional for a developer. Like it's the carrot approach, so.
Okay. All right. You satisfied with that?
It's really,
Okay.
yeah, we've got the marching order, so to speak.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right. Very good. It's an important topic for the whole region, and so we can dig into it for what will work in Hendersonville. Okay, we do have public hearing. First is a public hearing on Main Street pressure washing. Woo! Carpenter. Exciting.
Going to get through some heavy topics and then pressure washing. Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. Tonight, I've discussed this before, our public hearing rules according to North Carolina General Statute 168-536. For municipal service districts, all contracts have to go through a public hearing process. These have been discussed in the Downtown Advisory Board during budget conversations. This particular contract is for pressure washing after the Apple Festival. This is something that we have done every year, and we've through the price quotes that we've gotten from other companies, this is the company that has worked with us for many, many years now. They're familiar with our businesses, and they are WNC Pressure Washing. It's a contract for $9,900 per year, and it's a 5-year contract. They've done a great job with us before. They've worked with our businesses before, and we've appreciated the work they've done with us. And with that, I will open up any questions or.
Okay, thank you. Since our clerk is not here, I'm not sure who I'm asking, but has this public hearing been advertised in accordance with general statutes?
Yes, Mayor, I believe it has.
Thank you. We'll open this public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to comment on Main Street pressure washing? Anyone who wishes to comment? Anyone online seeking recognition?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and we will close that public hearing. Okay, council, discussion or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council adopt the resolution by the City of Hendersonville City Council to authorize the city manager to execute agreement with WNC Pressure Washing for annual Main Street pressure washing for the Main Street Municipal Service District as presented.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of the resolution regarding pressure washing say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it. Motion carries, and you can go ahead with that contract. The second public hearing is regarding a rezoning, a conditional zoning district, cottages at Mastermind.
Good evening, Council, Madam Mayor. Good to see you all this evening. This CZD application is for 2 parcels located off of Francis Road. The parcel that fronts Francis Road is currently zoned C2, and the larger parcel at the rear is zoned R40, and it borders Allen Branch Creek. In total, it's 12.76 acres, and they're proposing to rezone that to PRD for the development of 99 residential units, which would be 49 casita, 2-family dwellings, and one single-family home as well. Taking a look at the site, upper left corner is the far eastern side of the property. That's an existing driveway with some mature trees along that border. Those trees are not slated for preservation. The upper right corner is just a typical view of this heavily wooded site. Bottom left is a picture of a dry creek or a wet weather conveyance that is on the site. The USGS map shows this as a blue line stream, but the developer worked with the Army Corps, and it was determined that this is not surface water, and so our stream bank protection standards would not come into play on this particular stream. On the bottom right is Allen Branch Creek, where there is a floodplain and stream bank standards, and the development is not encroaching in that area other than where they've proposed a sewer line. The site plan, as I mentioned, depicts the 99 residential units on 12.76 acres. It also shows the driveways, the access, sidewalks, 188 proposed parking spaces, the open space, which totals 8.92 acres, and it highlights fire access with some grass pavers that are shown in red, and the greenway easement along Allen Branch at the rear of the property. The site plan was reviewed by the Development Review Committee. The details of the review were provided in the staff report, and I'll go over a couple of those items. The Community Development Department all the comments that we had were either resolved or will be addressed by the developer at the final site plan. We had no city-initiated conditions for this project. The Water Sewer Department, Stormwater Administrator, North Carolina DOT staff, Public Works Director, Fire Marshal, and City Engineer all had some comments, all of which were resolved by the developer or will be at the final site plan. The Floodplain Administrator reviewed the project and offered conditions related to the provision of the Greenway easement. And the city's transportation consultant has reviewed this proposal. The project did not initially trigger a TIA. The anticipated traffic generation counts did not exceed the city's thresholds. However, due to the location along a local street, a TIA was required by staff to address a requirement within the PRD standards, which states, access to the planned residential development shall be by means of a boulevard or thoroughfare, major or minor, designated as such in the Comprehensive Transportation Plan. Alternatively, access may be provided by means of streets other than major or minor thoroughfares when it is clearly demonstrated that the planned residential development will not result in a significant increase in traffic on any such street. The developer proposed a counter to the requirement for the TIA that the TIA be performed after the rezoning rather than in advance of the rezoning, and that they would address any mitigation that came from that at that time. And I'll just note that our transportation consultant, Jonathan Guy, is on the line if we have questions for him. Going over the conditions, there are a few conditions that the developer agreed to. I mentioned the Greenway easement. They agreed to the tree board, some of the tree board's recommendations, and for the most part, and there's one that I'll go over that they did not agree to. I mentioned that they had proposed a condition that was a counter to staff to perform the TIA after the rezoning. They've requested to have relief from the 75-foot requirement. Some parking spaces are further than 75 feet from some of the units. And the aerial stream crossing for the sewer line is a condition that they've put in there as well. This generated significant conversation at the planning board, and I'll go over that shortly. There's two conditions out there that were recommended, one by the tree board and one by planning board, that have not been agreed to. The tree board recommended some plantings around the stormwater management facility. I can let the developer, the development team speak to why they didn't agree to that. And the second condition listed here was initially brought up and presented to planning board, but is no longer being recommended by the water sewer staff. It was discussed and recommended by the planning board, but after further evaluation by the water sewer staff, it was determined that this is better addressed with the water sewer policy at the time of the final site plan review. And this is in relation to the where the alignment and connection of the sewer. I mentioned the Greenway easement. I just want to highlight this really quickly. The easement around where the red star is located, it would be provided as part of this site plan. The red space next to that is where we currently have a gap. Then we have some easements in place, and then the yellow or orange is where we've had another development proposal that's had a neighborhood compatibility meeting. And so it you know, depending on the future of that proposed development, that could fill another gap that would then connect to the Clear Creek Greenway, where easements are in place all the way from Allen Branch back to the local Oahu Greenway. A neighborhood compatibility meeting was held on June 3rd, lightly attended. There were general questions about the specifics of the development. Current land use, the subject property is unique in that it is split zone between the city's least intense zoning district, the R40, and one of the most intense districts, the C2, secondary business. The property also borders another R40 tract to the east, yet further to the east is the C3 highway business zoning district, which flanks Chimney Rock Road or US 64. To the north, the property borders the PCD development, planned commercial development associated with Highland Square development, where Walmart and Sam's Club are located. This development is buffered from the subject property by Allen Branch Creek, as well as a large retaining wall. To the east of the subject property is PRD development of Cedar Bluffs Apartments, which is, I believe this number is wrong. I think it's in the approximately, maybe under, in the 60 unit range. And adjacent to that is the Cedar Terrace Apartments, which is, I believe, approximately 80 units. And the combined density in this area, with including those, would be about 6 units per acre. And all properties to the south are zoned secondary business, as shown on the map. Taking a look at the future land use map, this entire area is designated as Regional Activity Center due to the proximity to I-26 and Chimney Rock Road. And the small portion that's designated as natural resource and agriculture is due to the location of Allen Branch Creek in the floodplain. And Francis Road is designated as a local street within our future land use map. So taking a look at the 6 standards that we review for rezoning, the first criteria considered is the comprehensive plan consistency. This project is consistent with the goal of the Regional Activity Center future land use designation. The site is designated as a priority growth area in the growth management map and is identified as a development opportunity. Compatible infill development, as well as the provision of a mix of land uses, is supported by the population and housing chapter as well. And that chapter includes some additional strategies such as encourage variation in lot sizes and housing types within new developments, and encourage mixed land use patterns that place residents within walking distance of services. The natural resources chapter had a number of strategies that were relevant, including protect land adjacent to streams in order to protect water quality, reduce erosion, and protect wildlife habitat, encourage restoration of natural habitat and drainage patterns, encourage clustered development that preserves open space while allowing a return on investment, promote the preservation of woodlands, and promote the location and design of open space within development so that they contribute and link individual homes to the city's green infrastructure network. The cultural and historic resources chapter and the community facilities chapter did not have any major relevant strategies. Water resources chapter makes the reference to encouraging low-impact development practices and stormwater management. And transportation and circulation had a couple of strategies related to developing a multimodal transportation system that encourages pedestrian and bicycle usage in order to promote pedestrian safety, reduce vehicle miles traveled, and encourage community interaction. That is the goal for part 1 of that chapter. There's also a strategy to encourage mixed-use pedestrian-friendly development that reduces the need to drive between land uses, identify and prioritize needed pedestrian connections within the community, encourage pedestrian connections between dead-end streets and adjacent neighborhoods, and preserve and expand the public greenway system. The second criteria relates to compatibility. In this case, there's a mix of high-density, low-density residential uses and intense commercial uses, all in vicinity of the project. The third criteria is change conditions. The subject property is in close proximity to Lakewood Road, where we've seen a significant increase in development recently. The fourth criteria is public interest. In addition to some of the housing numbers that we've heard earlier tonight, I just want to note that 846 of the 2,416 approved residential units, and those are units that have been approved within the last few years, 846 of those are under construction currently. The fifth criteria is public facilities. The subject property will be served by city water and sewer, as well as police, fire, and public works. The greenway easement at the rear of the property would assist in completing the easements needed to extend the Allen Branch Spur Trail to the Clear Creek Greenway. And for the sixth criteria, the effect on natural environment, the subject property features 340 trees that are 12 inches in DBH or greater. 240 of these are proposed to be cleared. Allen Branch runs along the rear of the property where no site disturbance is proposed beyond the proposed sewer crossing. The planning board considered this petition and voted unanimously to approve the request, with the exception of the aerial stream crossing. and with a condition addressing site lighting. As part of their motion, they proposed the comprehensive plan consistency statement on the screen. They also supported their motion with these 2 points of rationale for approval. And we've drafted some rationale for denial as well. This is a slight modification from what was in your packet. Item 2, specifically that Francis Road is a local street. The PRD zoning standards require that for developments on local streets, the developer shall clearly demonstrate that traffic will not significantly increase. This standard has not been satisfied. And with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Questions?
Can I ask a question?
No, sir. I'm sorry. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Would the developer like to make a presentation?
Good evening, Warren Sugg with Civil Design Concepts. I'm joined by Charles, Tom, and Gray of DHI Communities. I want to start off by thanking the staff. It's been a great process thus far. They've been very helpful, been a lot of communication on the project, and just really want to thank them for their input to this point. We are talking about a 99 unit development, 49 duplexes as mentioned, one single. It does have a clubhouse. I guess I have some ability to, let me move this. Has one clubhouse, has 3 sets of garages, and as you can see, a lot of different ways of connectivity here. There are 13 acres of this site. This site would, by code, would allow up to about 127 units, and we're proposing 99. We've got about 1.9 spaces per unit for parking. Every unit has a ground level access, which I think is important. So many people have to go up and down steps. These are all on grade. We have some great internal connectivity, and that's mentioned in some of the staff report. Which one's the magnifying glass? Top one. So along Francis Road, we've got a sidewalk here. That sidewalk comes in, and then you'll notice in between every one of these units and along our parking, we've got connectivity that gets sidewalk. So anybody inside of here can get to any other point within the development, and they can also get along Francis. There's an existing sidewalk just north of us. There is not any sidewalk south of us right now. So as other developers come along, they would be expected or hope to expand that. But we do have some great connectivity inside of here. You'll see a lot of different crosswalks. This is the clubhouse facility that I was mentioning. We tried to really centralize it so that everybody in the development could get to it very easily. Here's one of the garage units, and then you'll see the duplexes. A few other things I'll mention. We do have the sidewalks. We also have the greenway to the north that was mentioned in the presentation by staff. So along here, we're giving an easement to allow that continuation of greenway through here. We do have Allen Branch just to the north of us. A few other things. You'll see the on-site stormwater that was sort of mentioned in one of the conditions. So on-site, we have to collect and capture all that stormwater, take it to a place of treating it and releasing it under control. One of the conditions that I believe was brought up in tree commission was to add additional plantings on there and in other areas, and we agreed to do the plantings everywhere else. But because of the maintenance of stormwater ponds, you have to do every year, make sure that it's not overgrown, that you can have it actually accessible. It was our recommendation to just do a meadow mix there, which is pretty common to any of them, as opposed to additional plantings that may get large and unsightly and honestly hurt the performance of the stormwater. A few other things I'd like to mention. We do have water connection along Francis Road, domestic water, sewer connection to the north. We do have roughly 100 trees that are being saved, an additional 44 trees that are being planted, and approximately 296 shrubs that are being planted. Those trees and our shrubs are sometimes above and beyond what is actually by code. A few things I'll mention. We did hear about the TIA discussion, and we're not against doing the TIA. It's just school is now in session. So a little bit of background, and I think the city representative may be able to confirm this, but when you do a traffic impact study with NCDOT, you have to have school in session. School's not in session during the middle of the summer, so you can't do the counts. If you can't do the counts, you can't do the report. If you can't do the report, you can't produce it. So we're happy to do the TIA. School's back in session, we can do it. Whatever comes of that report, we're good with doing those recommendations that are agreed to. It's just timing didn't allow that to happen during the summer. The other thing, and I think I spoke to it on the planting around the ponds. I'm going to give you guys the sort of a handout here. So with this, you saw with some of the aerials that staff showed. The first page shows you a context map of where this site is in context with the Walmart, with Francis Road, with I-26, with 64. As you flip to the next page, you start to zoom in and you see some of those developments to the east of us that were recently developed. You also still see Highland Square to our north, shows the connectivity over to Francis, which gets you to 64. And then as you flip to the third and fourth pages, and this is relevant to the TIA discussion, there's been some talk that maybe a left-hand turn's needed here, maybe a right turn's needed here. We've expanded out as much as we can along our frontage for this right turn lane right here. This is in a curve of a road. As you can see, there's quite a bit of topo to the right side of the page, and I'm looking at the third sheet. So much so that you can see the 35-mile-an-hour sign that's almost at level with the driving surface. You'll also see the entrance to the property just to our north. As you flip to the next page, that's another image looking the other direction, and it's most relevant to our access point, and it also shows that topo. So we're willing to do this TIA. I think it times out nicely that we can get the traffic counts now. We can have that report done. We can work with the city's consultant, with our own consultant, and determine what it is. But I will say this is a very problematic area for a lot of improvements. There's a lot of topo there. It's a small road. We recognize connectivity. There's storm things that are going on. There's a lot that goes on in one of those, and we'd really like for those experts to just give us the final say on it. With that, I'll say we've heard tonight that there's a need for housing stock. This is a great infill project. It's close to retail, office, major thoroughfares, and a great use of the missing middle housing that was shown on one of the slides tonight in that graphic. And also it increases the working household housing stock that was also showed in one of the slides earlier tonight. Respectfully ask your positive vote on the request tonight, and welcome to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I have a question. At the entrance, there is an existing DOT right away on the opposite side of the road, is that right?
There's usually right-of-ways that are on both sides of a roadway. You're talking about Francis?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
What is the number of feet, though, on that left side?
It's usually centered up, so there should be pretty equal amounts on the left and right side of it. I don't know the exact footage, but as you can tell, there's not a ton of shoulder there today. As you look towards the north, where the sidewalk exists on the third page, that would be one potential area where things could get widened out. It's called asymmetric widening. It could go to the low side, it could go to the high side, or it could be in the middle.
Okay. Other questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it possible to build a left-hand turn lane? coming from the north to the south.
Is it possible to build a left-hand turn lane going from the north to the
I think that's the way you've drawn this here. So if I'm coming around Francis Road, I'm coming around the bend and I need to turn left, like a holding lane to turn left into the development.
left into the development?
Yes,
Southbound, yeah.
right, southbound from north to south.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible to build that lane or that holding lane in the middle?
It's possible with a couple caveats. You're going to be fighting grade. Potentially, you'd have enough right-of-way, yet to be determined. You'd have relocation of, or at least raising up of power lines. You'd be potentially talking to the landowner to the south, because if you go outside of right-of-way, we'd have to either get a temporary or permanent encroachment or easement for those grades or anything like that. So it's possible. I just don't know yet.
Okay. And how long would it take to get a TIA?
So normally they can do the counts reasonably quick, probably within a couple of weeks. And then once they do their report, which may take, I don't know, 30 days, 60 days, then you start some of the process of actual submittal. So the TIA process, you make a scoping document with NCDOT, with your local reviewer. You have 10 days at NCDOT for their first level of review. Those are 10 business days. They give you back, change this about your report or about where you're going to study. Once you get that study into them, they have 20 business days to make their first round of review. And then if all is well, then they give you another 20-day review after that. So 50 business days is the fastest.
After the report is done? Is that 50 days, or is that the 50 days getting the report done?
No, that's 50 days of their review time.
All right, so after the report is done, so even more than 50, I guess, is that right?
I guess the 10 is probably on the front end with their scoping. It's really the 20 and 20.
Okay.
Other questions? No? Okay. We may
Both for
have
any
some more
questions
as
you
we go
have.
along, but for now, thank you.
Thank you.
We will go to the public hearing. Madam Attorney, has this public hearing been advertised in accordance with general statutes?
Yes, Mayor, it
Okay,
has.
we will open this public hearing. Is there anyone present who would like to comment on this proposed development? Yes, sir. If you would come forward, give your name and address for the clerk's record, please.
My name is Stephen Trombley. I live at Park Place Trail in Hendersonville. My question would be for the city or the councilman, when you have developers that come to you and present these developments, and you have all these residents that will be moving in, do you think it's fair to the city to have all that burden of recreation put on the city when you could have it built into the development? I have seen no kind of recreation in that development at all. For not only the children, might be a small playground, but nothing for the adults. Would that be possible to add that into that development requirements?
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else present who wishes to comment on this proposal? Anyone present who wishes to comment? Is there anyone online seeking recognition?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Ken just raised his hand.
Okay, go ahead.
Ken Fitch. Yep.
Ken Fitch, 1046 Patton Street. Just a question of clarification regarding the sewer connection, which is, I understand, is unresolved. There has been mention of an action of eminent domain involved to accommodate the project. So the question is that something that the city would wish to initiate to accommodate the project if it's necessary? Because obviously that can be a very controversial issue. Just so some clarification on that. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Comment? Anyone?
So I'll try, and then I'll look to the community development staff. I think the conversation would be that the as we look at the development from the water and sewer infrastructure, the water and sewer team and the engineering team will try to find the best option to do that. And then if that option includes us to go across private property, then the conversation would then have to be held with, if we could not get permission from that property owner, then we would come back to the city council to look at, am I going in the right direction, to determine whether eminent domain would be appropriate, whether the council chose to do eminent domain. But until we decide the best method of providing sewer, we don't have the answer to that question.
It's not on the table for discussion
Yeah,
tonight.
that's right.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else seeking recognition?
No, ma'am.
There's a hand raised in the back.
Yes, again, if you would give your name and address for the clerk's record, please. Yes, sir. I was just trying to save time.
My name is Jim McKinley. I live at 1605 Kensington Road here in Hendersonville. I find being here at the meeting is very interesting. I'm glad I came, and I appreciate what you're doing. And this is just a question for the council to, sitting there, what is the urgency of approving a zoning change before you get the information of how this zoning change would affect the traffic, and then to vote to approve the zoning change, saying, well, we'll do the study and evaluate what the traffic change is after you approve the development? Would you please just explain to me why that's being considered? That's my question. What is the urgency? It all seems real good, but then this piece is just sitting here. Please explain the sense and the logic to me, and that would help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have not yet approved it, so. Anyone else?
I think it would be,
What?
helpful to mention too, that this particular development didn't actually trigger a traffic analysis in our ordinance.
Okay.
That's not what you said.
Well-
You said it did.
The DOT did not.
No, but he said it triggered one. So not DOT, some other reason.
We have a standard within the zoning ordinance specifically for when a traffic impact analysis is triggered, and there's specific thresholds that are, there are forecasts for traffic generated based on the number of units or the type of use, and if those forecasted traffic counts exceed our thresholds, then it automatically triggers a TIA. Because this is a PRD, a planned residential development, there's certain standards within the PRD section of the code. And it makes the reference that I read earlier, that doesn't specifically say a TIA is required, but it requires that they clearly demonstrate that they're not going to significantly increase traffic. So how do you do that? TIA is a really good tool to do that. And so with that, staff required that they do a TIA in advance. They countered with a condition asking that it be done afterwards. So it's kind of a gray area because PRD doesn't say you must do a TIA. It says this other wordy standard. So I hope that.
So to clarify it even further, that it didn't require it by numbers, by the number of potential trips, but under the PRD, staff can require it or request it because of the local street and concerns about traffic.
That's accurate.
That's correct. And I just wanted to add that the TIA language in our zoning ordinance further enables the community development director to require a TIA in situations where components of the project may impact the safety, otherwise impact traffic in the corridor. And because of the combination of the PRD and development along Francis Road, we made the TIA requirement. But to the point earlier, when we first looked at it, it didn't automatically trigger it. It was when we looked more closely at the project and at the PRD rezoning specifically.
If I may add one more, hopefully illuminating, in fact, the standards for TIA also give staff the opportunity through our transportation consultant to review a TIA and require that the developer construct any mitigation that comes out of the TIA. So even if they do the TIA after the rezoning, those standards would still be in play. So it wouldn't be that they just do the TIA and that's it. If it needed to be reviewed and revisions need to be made, that process would be followed through, and then the construction of any mitigation after that.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to comment?
Madam Mayor, Lynn Williams has raised her hand.
Okay.
Williams, Chadwick Avenue. The only comment I really have is on the amount of trees. If you please look at the tree board, this is not good for our tree city. This is terrible for our environment. The climate is in shambles. We need our city council to help our community and take responsibility for our environment. Please make responsible decisions when it comes to development and the destruction of such a large amount of trees. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay. All right. We will close that public hearing.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead, you're going to say something.
Okay, I was just going to ask the developer, the comment was made about recreation. You do have a clubhouse, what is associated with that?
So the clubhouse would have the normal areas of check-in, mail kiosk, pool, fitness rooms, meeting spaces, all those things, in addition to all the green area around it, walking spaces. A lot of different things that normal folks in that particular area may enjoy. I'm sure we'd love to have a pickleball court too if we got rid of a pool. But I don't know. It's
just any recreation for children.
Yeah, so we have recreational on site.
Playground or something like that.
Yes, ma'am. Yep, all the above.
There's a playground on site?
Yeah, I believe there's
Where that is?
some play area. Let me show you which page it's on.
Okay.
Playground or play area?
We have lots of area that can be dedicated as such. We don't have anything formalized right now, but we got lots of green spaces around. I mean, we were trying to really keep all the amenity space in the middle. So we have the pool, like I said, the different fitness areas, mail kiosks, clubhouse, functions within the clubhouse.
Okay.
Is that rectangle behind the clubhouse, is that the pool?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you are having young families, you might want to have consideration for a playground of some sort.
Structure.
Yep,
Yeah.
understood.
All right, you had.
Yeah, so we have Mr. Jonathan Guy online, which is our traffic consultant. And Mr. Guy, can you hear me? Should I try it again?
His box lit up.
Okay, Mr. Guy, can you hear me? Okay, well, if, in the absence of him speaking, I'm going to paraphrase my conversation with him today. He being our traffic consultant, he and I conversed via email today, specifically about the left-hand turn lane. And his concern was less about traffic count, but more about the curve of that road. And that a car waiting to turn left into the development would be at the end of a curve. And the concern he expressed was, are we creating a potential for an accident when someone comes around the curve and sees it's a car sitting there waiting to turn left? And I'm sorry he's not here, but he did agree that a left-hand turn lane would make that safer for someone waiting to turn left if there was a left-hand turn lane there. And so that's my only concern as far as the traffic goes with regard to this, in the absence of a TIA. In the absence of a TIA, one option we have is just to say, we'll wait and get the TIA. If they say you don't need a left-hand turn, I mean, I'm okay with that. But in the absence of that, we're trying to figure out what we think fits on a road that we know is going to have a lot more, I think the thing that was presented earlier was transportation and land use decisions are not made in isolation. And so we know all around there are a lot of units that are being built. Not all of them will necessarily take Francis Road, but many of them will. Certainly, we're talking about 99 structures. So, 1.9 parking spaces, so all the number of cars that are being parked there. And for people that might be coming that direction, turning left, I just think that we're avoiding a traffic fatality potentially, or at least a bad accident, by putting in the left turn lane there for people to turn in. And so that's why I think that we should require that, or just say we'll wait until the TIA comes back and we'll do something then. I think my reluctance, and this is not a criticism of staff at all, but it is a public safety issue, and that is kind of what we've been asked to do. And to me, it would be the kind of thing that it should be in whatever we're approving. So waiting for later for the TIA, and we'll see what happens, to me is not satisfactory when it comes to this turn in front of this location. And I'm sorry, Mr. Guy, I can't get online.
Mic troubles.
Is he? Okay. So, those are my thoughts of, I don't know how you would word that specifically, other than to say you have to put a left-hand turn lane in. I'm sure there's some other fancier language to put in there, but, or would you say, okay, we'll wait until the TIA comes back, and then we'll decide to approve it or not approve it then based upon that. Those are my thoughts.
And if DOT comes back and says it isn't necessary, you'll
Yeah, I mean, if they come
go
back
along
and,
with their judgment on that?
sure, yeah.
Okay.
Because even what I'm telling you today, when I spoke to Mr. Guy, he was like, I don't think the numbers are the problem. He said, I think the problem is the curve.
The curve, yeah.
Safety.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So once again, I don't think we're opposing doing a TIA, and we're not even opposing what may come out of the TIA. We're just asking for the timing to go ahead and happen. An NCDOT permit for that driveway is tied to any improvements, the TIA, the study, all that. So we have no path forward without you guys' approval and NCDOT's approval.
Would you agree then to put the left-hand turn lane in? And if the TIA doesn't require it, we won't do it?
So we're saying that we're conditionally agreeing to a turning movement that may not be needed.
Yeah, but you're agreeing to it so that if it is needed, there's going to be no question. We're not going to come back and ask for, look at it again or anything like that. If they say it's needed, then it goes. I do have one question on TIA. Does our traffic person get to look at that TIA?
Yes.
Okay. So our consultant gets
I'd
to look
like-
at that.
I mean, I'd like to leave it in the hands of NCDOT, your traffic expert, your staff and everything else. I completely hear what you're saying, to go ahead and put a condition in. It just seems sticky to have a condition that then we're backing back out of when the experts have said it may or may not be needed.
I think it would be contingent on whether the experts say it
Yeah,
is or
if
is
the
not
ex,
needed.
you're going to go ahead and agree to it now. And if they say, yep, it's needed, we're all good. And if they say it's not needed, then we'll agree that you don't have to put it in. I mean, that sounds reasonable to me.
I mean, it would certainly make me feel more comfortable. Like, we all know that we need housing. We just had a whole presentation on it. I think this development is on the right track, but that is a pretty serious curve, and it would be a shame for us to overlook the fact that it's a very serious curve and not get all of the information.
Can I ask you a question, Angie?
Certainly.
Can we craft a condition like this? Okay, so we're within,
Sure.
Yeah.
It would say something to the effect that developers shall construct a left turn lane if required by NCDOT.
So we've got a condition on there. How close is it to what we're already talking about?
There's something about a left-hand turn lane in there. Please point it out to me.
I was just trying to remember exactly what it said about traffic impact.
Wow.
Developer will
You can read
perform a TIA after the rezoning is considered due to the location of the project with a local street. As stipulated by PRD zoning, the developer will be responsible for all or any mitigation of the traffic impacts recommended as a result of the findings.
Would you be willing to add including the construction of a left turn lane at the end of that?
Would y'all like to do that?
Yeah, but I'm saying in here right now, this is what some of us need, honestly, to vote for this. So if you will say, we will build a left-hand turn lane, if that is required by the TIA, I'm in. I can meet you halfway. But your reluctance to say that makes me concerned that somebody's going to play with some facts and going to be pushing somebody and saying, do we really need that, all that stuff later on, as opposed to letting them, fall where they should. Okay, so all we're asking you to do is say, we're agreeing to do it unless the TIA says we don't need it.
Understood, Mr. Smith.
I mean, okay.
So with regards specifically to the left turn lane, Warren pointed out a lot of topographical concerns. We do not have a topographic study. We do not have a survey on the opposite side of the street to know exactly where that right-of-way line goes. From experience, I can tell you cannot put a retaining wall or the grid supporting a retaining wall inside of the right-of-way. So that means we would very likely need to acquire land from our neighbor, and then we get into that other issue where, like the sewer, where we'd love to be able to do that, but it's not our land. We don't have the by right ability to construct that. So if the TIA data says, if NCDOT says we're not going to issue a driveway permit unless you put in a left turn lane, then we will have to, under our current condition, put that left turn lane in. But until we know that that is absolutely required, we don't have the data at this point to say, yes, we can or cannot do that. It's something where, again, up until now, up until 2 weeks ago, we were under the impression that we did not need a TIA. So when we asked before school let out for the summer if we needed to do traffic counts, we didn't get the counts because we didn't need the TIA at that time. Now that school's back in, we can get those counts. But in the meantime, our project has progressed. We still have a land contract with a date we have to meet. So we will absolutely do the TIA. We will commit to whatever improvements come out of the TIA. But I can't say at this point we're definitely going to do a left turn lane or not going to do a left turn lane. It'll be whatever the recommendations from NCDOT are, supported by the data.
I appreciate
including if NCDOT says there must be a left turn lane, it's their road, we will do it.
I appreciate it, sir, but I'm just going to tell you straight up, unless you're not going to agree to it in here, you're not going to get my vote. Okay, because you're saying if they make us do it, we'll do it. And I'm asking you to say, to commit to that, we will conditionally commit to putting it in. And I don't understand why you can't say it, but it's okay.
Right, it's already in the conditions.
No, it's not. It's not you committing to do a left-hand turn lane, which is what we're asking you to do, just that simple.
I can't commit to that because I don't own the land across the street. And so if NCDOT says it is required, we'll have to approach the neighbor and try to acquire their land. I can tell you from looking at it firsthand, their driveway is pointed up to the street. If we back up their driveway, it'll be even steeper and create a safety hazard for them trying to leave their site. That's what I see out of it. But again, I'll defer to the experts at NCDOT, at Kinley Horn, at Ramey Kemp. And if the data shows that it's required, then we'll have to approach the owner and try to buy some land from them.
Is our traffic guy on the phone now, or on the computer now?
he is.
Can we just talk to him?
Yeah.
'Cause I'm not a traffic expert, but
Yeah.
maybe he could give some insight. Yeah.
Jonathan, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yay.
Yes.
Sorry about, you gotta love technology, and sorry I couldn't be there, but as I explained I was exposed to COVID, so I can't travel, and I don't want to get anybody sick. So I apologize for not being there, though. What questions do you have?
All of them.
Okay.
Jen, do you have a question for him?
I was just wondering if, oh, I feel like there's an echo.
There is.
What's happening?
Go ahead, try it again.
Okay, I was just wondering, do you feel like the DOT's evaluation of a driveway permit would require them to put a left-hand turn lane in?
There's two different processes. The driveway permit process is literally just a permit to approve the driveway connection, which really gets into the design of the driveway, the spacing of the driveway, the conditions associated with it, what it looks like, the number of lanes, things like that. DOT has a TIA policy, which is in their driveway manual, which spells out when a TIA is required. Per DOT standards, a TIA would not be required in this case because it doesn't meet their threshold of 3,000 trips per day. So from their perspective, they would not look at requiring a traffic study. Now, in the driveway manual, there's also a section in there under general statute, I think it's 129. The district engineer at their discretion for any road that has an ADT, an average daily traffic volume of more than 4,000 vehicles per day, the district engineer, without a traffic study and at their discretion, can require a turn lane. If they feel there's a need for that based on access or safety. So they will have a review of that as they come in for the driveway permit process, but it will not be based on traffic analysis. It will be more based off of looking at it from a safety perspective and what they see for that road and the conditions that they're approving the driveway.
So the likelihood of them doing a TIA and then being required by some other body except us to have a left turn lane is not going to happen.
Most likely that is the outcome, correct, from a DOT perspective.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Guy, you just said that you don't think DOT is going to require them to put a turn lane in?
Based on the TIA.
Based on what DOT looks at traditionally, given the size of the development, most likely they would not require it, just straight up from a policy standpoint.
So the likelihood is when we do this TIA, it's going to prove that they don't need it. Is that right?
Most likely that would be the case, absolutely, because of the volumes there, the directionality that the development is most likely going to take. Most of the trips would be a right in versus a left in, would be a left out, headed back up towards 64. And so the volumes from a warrant standpoint would not be there for a left turn lane. Now, a traffic study hasn't been done, but that's based on conversations relative to this development from all parties who were there tonight. That's been kind of the general indications that have been given.
In your expert opinion, do you believe a left turn lane should be required for this development?
I think a left turn lane needs to be considered for this location based off of the curvilinear nature of the roadway, the fact that there is more development that keeps occurring throughout this area. Traffic is only growing along Francis. You're going to see this as a continued popular location. It should be looked at from a safety perspective, looking at the sight lines and sight distance, not only for the exiting driveway, but also as you're approaching it from a roadway standpoint. You've got several areas through there where you've got obstructed view sheds because of the curves, the vertical and the horizontal curves, as well as the vegetation along the roadside. All those things need to be considered when you're looking at the overall functionality and safety of the roadway. Based on Henderson County GIS, it looks to be about 60 feet of right-of-way. Again, that's GIS. It's not a survey. A survey would need to be done. You need to look at the factors that have been enumerated by the civil engineer and by the developer as well. Topographical features, is it a symmetrical or an asymmetrical widening? Meaning, are you just widening from the middle and out, or are you widening to one side? Those factors would need to be considered because that each of those, if you were to put a turn lane, would change the sight lines. The last thing you want to do is create a condition or a situation where, someone is leaving the development, or someone is approaching the development, someone's waiting there, be it that they've gone somewhere else and they're not coming the traditional way, and there's a car stopped as they're waiting. That's what happens when we develop roads that were traditionally farm to market roads, country roads. More development gets out there, volumes increase, and people who are not accustomed to that, sometimes you have those safety incidents. So I would recommend consideration of one evaluated based off of the design guidance and engineering standards relative to this as you move forward. It needs to be considered.
Do you know if there are any other remediation techniques that could be used in this situation with the right-of-way on that right side of the road?
You can look to see, in this case, I know they've looked at a provision for a right turn lane, and given the predominance of the traffic as they're projecting it to head back to 64, that does pull traffic out of the roadway. Anytime you can separate turning movements, you're creating a more safe, separate the throughs and the lefts or the rights, you're creating a safer environment. You can also look to see, again, I haven't done a sight distance study. I've just looked at the corridor. I've driven the corridor a couple of times and looked at it. And to me, it looks like there is sight distance issues. We need to look at that. That is a part of the driveway permit process. There might need to be some selective vegetation clearing within the right-of-way so that you do have, or you can enhance the sight lines. Those are the traditional mitigation measures that you would look at in this case.
And so DOT would actually require those things to be taken care of with their driveway permit?
So yes, if the applicant is approved and they submit their driveway connection plans and they file the driveway permit application, on those plans they're required to show the sight distance, both intersection and stopping sight distance. Those are the two different. I'm getting very technical on this, but you would need to look at both of those to see, because you've got some topography issues, you've got the vertical and horizontal curves. You'd want to make sure that you did have appropriate sight distance. You're in the foothills, some mountains in this area, and so that is a very critical situation. Additional signage might be needed in this case to alert drivers who are approaching that there is a new driveway in this case, in this location where there's a greater frequency of encountering a car. There's things like that that can be looked at. DOT will look at sight distance as a part of the driveway permit process.
Can I ask a question?
Sorry.
Mr. Guy, in your expert opinion, would a left-hand turn lane make it safer for people getting into that development?
Sure. Anytime there's a provision for a car to safely turn from, a roadway where they're not sitting in the through lane, which is, you're not considering a car might be there in this case, it would make the intersection safer.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guy.
That's all for right now.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Any other questions or discussion?
Well, I'm sticking with what I've said already, which is, the least I feel like they can do is just conditionally agree to build it. And if they come back that they don't have to, then no harm, no foul. I guess my concern is the intent behind this if they're not willing to at least conditionally agree to it.
I mean, after talking to Mr. Guy, it sounds like the likelihood of the TIA requiring it is extremely low unless our district engineer gets involved and decides they need it for a safety aspect. So honestly, after talking to Mr. Guy, I'm leaning more towards that needs to be explored.
Yeah, he just said it. They need to look into that.
No, but I mean, like, it needs to be not just required by the TIA, I think.
Oh, being we required?
Yes.
Oh, I'm all aboard on that, 100%.
Or it needs to be worded differently.
Yeah, I mean, I was okay with going halfway, but I'm 100% in of required.
Yeah, and my only concern is getting them into a situation where they're having to acquire land that somebody doesn't want to sell, or,
Or change the development and go on their side of the street,
yeah.
which is also, nobody mentioned that.
Yeah.
But that's a possibility, to change the development on their side of the street.
I mean, the safety factor is just too important.
Safety.
And I mean, you could require signage, but let's be honest, if it's nighttime and somebody's going to turn left, you may not be paying attention to that signage.
Angie, can you help us with how we would word that in a nice, pretty legal way?
I guess I need a little bit more direction. So you want to require it, is there any circumstance in which it would be required?
Well, at this point, no.
Okay. One thing I would mention is for the Washburn development, we did craft a condition that said that the developer would use good faith efforts to acquire it if it's required, if it's necessary, and if not, they would come back and ask city council to condemn it, and if city council were unwilling to condemn it, then they wouldn't have to do it. And so it's kind of a way to, give an assist if it's that important to city council to have the turn lane. And so we have done that in one instance already. And we don't have the data to know whether, for sure, acquiring the other land is necessary. It appears that it may be, but we don't know that for sure. And the good faith effort in the Washburn situation was that they would have to have an appraisal done and offer the appraised fair market value of the purchase. And if the person didn't accept that, that's when they could come back to city council and ask city council if you wanted to condemn the additional right-of-way for the development or not.
No, I will say that situation feels a little different to me, just because this is from a safety standpoint, and that was from more of a traffic stacking standpoint and a traffic moving standpoint. So this situation just feels different to me, because it's a safety issue.
So then you would need to say that if the turn lane isn't built, then the development won't happen. And that's what you would say. And that's your discretion. So my recommendation is if that's the condition that you wish to impose, that's the way you would vote. And then it would be up to the developer whether or not they wish to agree to it. And if they don't agree to it, then the conditional rezoning is not effective.
Okay, and so the condition would be that the developer has to build a left-hand turn lane. Just say that? Okay.
In accordance with, is Jonathan still on the line? There are guidelines, I'm sure, right, that govern a left turn lane in this situation?
For safety.
DOT, I'm sure, has them.
Is he still?
I'm not Jonathan, but it's off of miles per hour of the road. And
So there are standards that would dictate the length and all of that. So it'd be in accordance with NCDOT standards.
there are standards that are set there. One thing I will mention, for what it's worth is, and I think I pointed to, we've maximized that right turn as much as we can to try to get that traffic out. And I hear that the conversation is all about the left turn. And I'd heard something about maybe asymmetrical and pushing it all onto our property. I don't know, with the other development that's just north of us and their sidewalk, their connection, it may get back into that. It may not, I don't know. We'd have to look at that miles per hour, what the available right-of-way is. But we are trying to maximize that area as much as we can, make it safe. As you start to move steeper into the curve or more into the site, it gets to be a tighter and tighter turn. So ideally, you want straight routes. So you'd like to move it more towards the lower land. Does that make sense?
So was the left turn lane ever mentioned at planning board? The planning board, did they ever mention this?
Was left turn lane mentioned at planning board?
Like the entire time, there's never been a mention of a left-hand turning lane?
No, they did not discuss that item or concerns related to the timing of the TIA, mainly focused on the sewer connection issue.
But they had all this information. They just chose not to address it at all, right?
That's correct. Same information.
We would add this condition in where on here?
Number 2?
Uh-huh.
If it's worded like it usually is worded, number 2.
Permitted uses and applicable conditions presented on the site plan shall be amended to include.
You would add a
It's that one, and then we would add
number 2 under it.
number
yes.
2. Left hand turn lane according to NCDOT standards.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Madam Mayor, are we at a motion point?
Unless there's further discussion at this point.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I move City Council adopt an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the City of Hendersonville, changing the zoning designation of the subject properties, pins 957-948-2415 and 957-948-6832, from R40 low-density residential and C2 secondary business to PRD planned residential development, conditional zoning district, based on the site plan and list of conditions submitted by and agreed to by the applicant dated July 29, 2022, and presented at this meeting and subject to the following. 1, the development shall be consistent with the site plan, including the list of applicable conditions contained therein and the following permitted uses. Permitted uses are 1, 2-family residential, and 2, single-family residential. Okay. 2, permitted uses and applicable conditions presented on the site plan shall be amended to include, 1, within the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act and per safety regulations, lighting shall be downward facing and fully shielded. Sidewalks away from the parking areas will use pedestrian height lighting as negotiated with city staff. And 2, a left-hand turn lane according to NCDOT standards. 3, the petition is found to be consistent with the City of Hendersonville's 2030 comprehensive plan based on the information from the staff analysis, and because subject property is located in an area designated as a development opportunity and priority growth area according to the city's 2030 comprehensive plan. Furthermore, the Regional Activity Center future land use designation recommends densities exceeding those proposed for this development. 4, furthermore, we find this petition to be reasonable and in the public interest based on the information from the staff analysis, public hearing, and because 1, the development of 2-family residential dwellings will provide a needed housing type, and 2, the development will provide housing in close proximity to shopping and employment opportunities.
Is there any discussion?
Angie just brought up a good point. Do we still want to require the TIA if we are requiring the left-hand turn lane?
I don't have a need to put that in there.
So would we need to amend the language to remove that?
Yes, because it is on the site plan.
Okay. Where would I go back and put that into?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then under number 2, we'll add number 3, a TIA will not be required.
Yes, sir.
A TIA will not be required.
Okay. Everyone okay with that? Yes. Okay. Anything else? Any other discussion? Okay. We'll go ahead and vote. Those in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no.
No.
Okay, the mayor votes aye. The vote, Debbie, I could not.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the vote is 4-1. It does carry, and can proceed with checking on DOT with that, see what needs to be done. Okay. Thank you.
And these people are really ready for pickleball time.
And then when they
Yes.
leave, we can
Yep.
take a break?
Sure.
Okay. Pickleball court discussion. Okay, who all is
Hopefully something a little lighter. Good evening, council members. Hopefully this will be a little bit more fun discussion. This is a very similar presentation to what we went over last time. We tried to hone it down to some more concise options and not be quite so sprawling. Same facts and figures. Essentially, this is one of the fastest growing sports in the country. It's on fire right now. Demand is going up. There's a lot of talk about some older folks really embracing this, but the reality is, that it's dropping every year. Last year alone, I think the average age dropped 3 years, which is fairly significant in the world statistics. So, very quickly, this is the main sites we're talking about. Oops, excuse me. All right, try that again. This is the current basketball courts in this area. You'll notice we do have some sedimentation and some slight flooding issues. This is the 2 tennis courts in this area. Sure, is that better? Yeah. Great. And then we have the racquetball courts that have been demolished, okay? We kind of broke this down by site, so everything under option 1 would be the old racquetball site. And so for option 1A, the proposal would be to put in 2 permanent pickleball courts and then 1 tennis court. Of note, this site is just a little too small for us to put in 2 regulation tennis courts, which was the original proposal when we talked about bringing the courts over from Boyd Park. This is effectively the layout. Some of the pros, it gives a win to everybody. We would have some new pickleball courts that would be established, and they would be permanent. They wouldn't be the portable design, which can cause a little bit of contention. It also would bring in 1 more court to Patton Park. The con is that, we're not bringing 2 tennis courts in, which we originally wanted to do. Another con is that the business park next door has a paved driveway that comes up the side of the lot, and we would be taking 6 feet of that encroaches onto city land. It might still be passable, but we will need every inch of it. So that's option 1A. And another option is to do something completely different. If we did choose to transition the basketball courts into a larger 8 or possibly even 12 court facility, we do have the option of turning the racquetball site into a multi-use style basketball court. It could be basketball. It could also incorporate some other sports as well. Like you can see the soccer goals on this one, and we could also add some extra basketball goals as well. So it would be a little more multi-purpose. But again, we'd be going from probably 4 basketball goals that we currently have to 6 or even 8 goals. Yeah. And so, some of the cons is that it is kind of close to 25, so it would be could be a little louder, but we would have it fenced and make it safe, and access would still be from the main parking lot by Patton Pool. The other thing is that if you did put a facility there, it would definitely change the feel of the entrance when you came into Patton Park pretty significantly, and it would also, probably impact one of the main uses for the park is walkers on the greenway, and so you would have the courts right up against the greenway. So, all right. So another option, moving on to site 2, would be the tennis courts. The existing tennis courts have over 350 feet of cracks on them. They're going to have to be refinished. they don't play well. They're starting to have dead spots. The very back corner by the creek has also had some, a large crack now that's just getting worse and starting to settle a touch. The courts that we have are 109 by 120, which means you can have 2 regulation-sized tennis courts or 6 pickleball courts maximum. If we extended it about another 10 feet towards the parking area, then it could house as many as 8 pickleball courts or a combination thereof. So option 2A, and that's kind of how we've done this again, is, you know, a numerical option for each site, and then A, B, and C will be the options you guys can choose from. Option 2A is 8 full-size pickleball courts that would be permanent year-round. They could be covered, however, it's not quite perfect of a site. And if we did expand that to 120 by 120, we would have to move a couple light poles and 1 utility pole, which would also add to the cost of the project. It is something that could be phased if we chose to do that, to add a cover at a later date. The other option with this is, I imagine this is going to bring quite a bit of traffic, and there would be some parking issues possibly down the road with patent pools, especially in the summertime. Option 2B is if we expanded it, we could go with 1 full-size tennis court and then 4 pickleball courts. That's kind of a good compromise in a lot of people's eyes. The cons is if we did this with combination 1A, we would only have 2 full-size tennis courts or regular tennis courts. So that's option 2B. Going back, I should note we could do 1 pickleball overlay on the tennis court. It wouldn't be super busy. And I only bring that up because the next option would be is if we did 2 overlays on that tennis court. This does kind of breed a little bit of contention because you have portable nets. Sometimes they want to get left out. Sometimes they want to be put away. Usually one group's not happy with one part of it, but it would bring in a possibility of 6 courts on that site with 2 overlays. If you were to just do this as a long-term fix, it's probably not the best option. It's not going to meet demand. You know, the staff's opinion, we would probably want at least 8 courts in the park to meet current demand, and you know, it's probably only going to go up from there. And the last option would be 2D, and that's to be if we did 2 full-size tennis courts where they currently are, and we kind of squeeze 6 overlays into that, and then those would all be temporary or portable nets that would have to be housed, put up, put away each time. It also breeds contention in the sense that, you know, if there's 1 tennis match, that puts 4 pickleball courts out of service for the match. So, all right. Moving on, we do have the option of the softball field. We have a couple options for that, and you notice this would be a long, skinny design. If we ever did choose to cover it, it would save us about $120,000 on the cost of a cover. And it also, we would be able to visually kind of tuck it into that corner of the park. So it's not necessarily right up against the greenway. You'd still be using the parking for the for patent pool most of the time. We have a pedestrian bridge that would lead to this. There would be the option of if there was a tournament or something housed here, we could have parking in the field as an option. We could also, by going with a longer skinny design, if you did cover it, it would allow us to go with a much lower height. So, you know, if you had an 8-court setup like a square, you're talking about 52 feet of height, where this would be, I believe, in the high 30s, something like that. So a much lower profile. And then we could also soften something like this with landscaping. The big issue with this is that it is in floodplain. We would have to have a zero-rise permit, which would probably also incorporate a stream restoration design of some sort. And that's really just more about timing. Okay. It would look something similar to this, but it would probably be at least an 8-court setup. So the other option that we could use for the softball field is also to turn that into a dog park. It would be a relatively low cost. We could probably recycle and reuse some of the fencing that we have for the softball field. We do get a lot of get a lot of requests for it and things like that. And unfortunately, a lot of people use it as a dog park already. It happens a lot, just put it like that. We would need any stream restoration. We would take down the old softball facilities like the umpire stand and press box, stuff like that. And the third option is we wouldn't change anything. So I do have in here to con is if we do eventually make the Clear Creek Park, that's also an ideal dog park site that could either change the situation or relieve some of that. Covered courts, I kind of went over it already. These are just some different options, some different styles. The one on the lower right-hand side would be for like a square style setup of 8 courts, maybe 12 courts. The one on the left, lower left-hand corner would be something similar. Someone mentioned some shade options earlier. You can see these folks went with a 7-court setup to offer that shade and a place for folks to get off the courts and actually be able to rest. I should note we also have a picnic pavilion right next to this tennis court that we could use as well that could offer overflow and kind of offer some of that. So, and again, the cost on these is for the square setup about $500,000, and for the longer, skinnier version to be about $380 is the estimate I received. These are just some different options, just some visuals rather.
Can you go back one?
Sure.
Okay. 109 by 120. Can the bottom two, those are tennis courts, right? Right?
Yes. So those would be, each half of that would be 120 by 109.
Right.
So it's just really
can we do that option?
Yes.
Okay, so 6 on the, I don't care where you put them, but there's 6.
On our existing tennis courts?
No, existing tennis courts, and beside it, including the old racquetball courts. Can we build all that right there in that location?
No, we cannot. It's just not wide enough. It's only 100 feet wide, if I'm not mistaken.
So
if I understand what you're asking correctly.
let me move it along a little further because we are running. It is 8:20. So you, Mark, and Tom and I met at the site yesterday, and we had kind of a couple of recommendations I thought we talked about. Do you have those recommendations on what?
I do.
Let's jump right to those recommendations and maybe show. Can we show? Because I think what we talked about was on the front side where the racquetball courts, we would put 1 tennis court and 2 pickleball courts.
Sure. So we don't have an actual visual of them both together. Okay. But it would be, what the staff has recommended is option 1A, 2B, and 3B. And I can go back and hit those real quick. So, 1A, this would be the racquetball site. So this would give us 1 tennis court and 2 pickleball courts. And 2B, which would be right next to it, would give us the 2nd court and then 4 more permanent courts, really 5 more permanent courts. The only problem with this is the tennis net would be a little bit high.
That's if we striped it for pickleball. If we don't stripe for pickleball, it's not a problem.
It's not a bad problem to have. I mean, most folks would rather play if it's not being utilized.
So
not play.
I think where staff would be, at least from city manager's perspective, is if we could end up with 2 tennis courts take the racquetball site and the existing tennis court site, and you end up with 2 regulation tennis courts and then 6 pickleball courts, 6 dedicated pickleball courts on those 2 sites, based on financing and being able to get it done in a timely manner without having to worry about core permitting. Well, you still may have to do some permitting, but waiting on other items would be the most ideal to move forward relatively in an efficient manner, I think. And then ultimately, the other piece of this would be to direct staff also to look at converting the softball field to a dog park or some other amenity that's not being used. So that would be the staff's proposal at this point, to look at 2 tennis courts and 6 pickleball courts on that site configured between the existing tennis courts and the site where the existing racquetball courts were.
And that's 6 dedicated pickleballs.
Yes, that'd be 6 dedicated.
And that would give us 2 more overlays as well.
No,
That would
no.
take it to 8.
No proposal to cover it at this point.
Ooh.
I think this is to get it up and running.
And based on the money that we feel like we have in existing budgets, and based on other priorities we know the council has also.
Covers may be possible at a later date with this
Yeah.
option, or no?
Yes, yes. It's definitely an option down the road.
Yeah, the challenge with the cover on the racquetball court side, because of power lines, right? But tennis court side, it's a little easier to do that.
It's nowhere near as bad. We'd only have to really move one utility line or a pole.
Right.
And to do both of these with the funds we have, we would probably need an additional 50 to 75,000 as well, in addition to the 250,
Right, to do the 2 courts, 6 courts.
to do the proposal, yes.
And we would also rehab the current basketball courts.
That does not include rehabbing the currently, it would definitely need to be done down the road, but it does not do that at this time.
Our discussion is that would be in a future CIP. Again, trying to move forward with the funding that we do have now with that, so.
Okay. All right.
I like that option.
Further questions or discussion?
There is, can we just word that as 2 tennis courts, 6 pickleball courts, not 1A, 1B, 3R?
Yes.
And word it however you like.
Okay, so I would like to share this, because we have discussed it. I feel like, at least initially, we should not stripe the tennis courts as pickleball courts. They should be dedicated tennis courts. If we decide later on that we want to switch it, that's fine. But we are trying to, part of this is to end the civil war over the courts. And so that tennis knows they got their courts and pickleball knows that they have their courts. So my recommendation is we don't stripe tennis with pickleball. Because if the tennis players went over there on the pickleball courts and started playing, they'd be really upset about that.
I thought that's what the dedicated meant, was that we weren't going to stripe them.
Well, there's
Well, no, he
what
mentioned
we're
that.
calling
That's what I'm
dedicated
saying.
or permanent, and then there's overlays, which,
So no over.
Okay. I thought we were doing 2 dedicated pickle, 6 dedicated, or 6, yeah.
I just want to make it clear, because he mentioned the overlay, that we're not voting for the overlay.
No, dedicated.
just to play devil's advocate, it also means that we'll have resources not being used and utilized that are ripe or
So
ready for
noted.
taking. So.
Yeah, because we're going from 4 tennis courts to 2,
Yep.
so.
It'll
We're
be
going
really
to
interesting
0
to see
dedicated
how often
pickleball
those
courts in the
pickleball
city
courts
to
are
6. So I do think that's a pretty substantial step on our part.
It's a great step.
I do notice
My
that the
opinion.
tennis players are here too.
Now, we can't take public comment, I'm sorry. Because it would take all night, and it is getting very late.
Lifetime investment for all of us. We have 2 minutes. Ms. Mayor?
No, I'm sorry. No public comment on this one. Okay? No. You can talk to us individually afterward. Okay? All right.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council direct staff to move forward with the development of pickleball courts in the following manner: 6 dedicated pickleball courts and 2 dedicated tennis courts in the current location of the old racquetball courts and tennis courts.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of the proposal say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, and staff will move forward with that. Thank you. And let's take a 5-minute break.
No, you're right.
meeting back to order and go into new business. Resolution to select contractor for 2022 resurfacing project. Mr. Wooten.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Staff completed a formal bid process last month. Tar Heel Paving and Asphalt Company was the low bidder on that project, and we are requesting to move forward with the low bidder. Since the bid was a really good price, and we have $600,000 in our budget for paving this year, we are going to have to do a second round of informal bid just to add on some more streets. That's a little bit different from how we've done it in the past, but with all the changes and stuff in our purchasing, we learned that this is how we need to go forward. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you guys might have.
Questions?
When will this project take place?
Probably, I don't know that we'll get started at the end of the month, but hopefully we can.
Awesome.
It all depends on how busy the contractor is and how quick we can get all our paperwork done on our end.
Okay, so this fall, sometime this fall.
Yeah, and if we can't get everything done before winter hits, then we'll delay it until the spring. But hopefully we can get everything done.
All right, all 4 people that are watching this. Hendersonville is
Right.
fixing your
Can't
streets.
believe that everybody left.
You're fixing them. It's exciting.
We're gonna stripe some pickleball courts on some streets.
No, we're not.
We did that in COVID. We had one on my little street.
That's funny.
You can do it in chalk in front of your place.
All right, would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council approve the resolution by the City of Hendersonville City Council to select a contractor for the 2022 street resurfacing project, authorize the Director of Public Works to execute a contract, and to bid and award additional street projects within budget funds available as presented.
Okay, is there any discussion? To those in favor of the resolution, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it, and motion passes. Go ahead with that. Thank you. Thank you.
It's got to be a record.
Okay, next, an ordinance to amend Chapter 22 of the Code of Ordinances to prohibit outdoor burning of certain materials in the city's municipal services district. Chief Miller.
Madam Mayor, members of City Council, she just read exactly what I was going to tell you we're doing. So we're looking for, we're speeding the process up because you have closed session. So in a nutshell, we've reviewed different policies, procedures, International Code Council, National Forestry's air quality standards, and we're looking to implement or change the ordinance to allow no open burning in the municipal service districts, meaning downtown and historic 7th Avenue. What that means, I mean, I'm more than happy to answer questions if you have them.
Basically, businesses, restaurants would be able to use a contained fuel, natural gas, propane type material, but could not burn wood.
Right,
Is that
correct. It
correct?
would allow 4 different types of fuel: alcohol, natural gas, propane, and kerosene, heating, fires, decorative fires. What this is going to prohibit is burning wood. So essentially, right now, you could put a barrel on Main Street and burn it. And we're
Why
trying.
would you say that right now?
We're about to change that right now.
We're about to change that right now, so that we give the police chief something to do. So, yeah, so we're just trying to anticipate that and strike that opportunity prior to rearing its ugly head.
So this does not prohibit everybody's outdoor propane heaters. They're
Correct,
all
sir.
still good.
Correct, sir.
Right.
Absolutely.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Council, discussion or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move that the City Council adopt the ordinance to prohibit outdoor burning of certain materials in the city municipal service districts as presented.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of the ordinance say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it. All right. That one passes, and can't burn wood outside there anymore. All right, next, 2022 installment financing contract.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, good evening. Tom Wooten, challenge accepted. So before you is a resolution authorizing staff and the financing team to approach the LGC on the financing for the Fire Station 1, Edwards Park, Fire Ladder 1, and Fire Engine projects. Happy to help with any questions. Otherwise, I'll leave it to you guys.
Any questions?
Any reason why your motion is in all caps?
That's how the bond attorneys wrote it, so that's how it remained.
You were
So you gotta
trying to
yell
one-up him, and yours is in all caps, so there you go.
Okay. All right, no questions? Any discussion or a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council adopt the resolution of the City of Hendersonville, North Carolina, approving an installment of financing contract and delivery thereof and providing for certain other related matters as presented.
Any discussion? Not. Those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, motion passes, and sit on that one. All right, Mr. Huffman, first one is Stormwater Construction Grant Application Resolution.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Mayor, members of council, happy to be here tonight. Nice to controller, and I'll try to do my best auction your voice throughout this presentation. This first presentation is Mud Creek Floodplain Restoration Project. A little bit of project.
Thank you, Adam. A little bit of project background. So as you all are familiar, the south side of the city floods frequently. It's a floodplain and floodway, and it's been heavily developed. So in 1958, the Tennessee Valley Authority actually issued a report on the flooding situations in Mud Creek and the three tributary streams, those being Bat Fork, Devil's Fork, and King Creek in the vicinity of Hendersonville, North Carolina. They made several recommendations on future development practices, and maybe development shouldn't be focused in that area, and the historic records of all the floods that had happened since the 1800s, and I guess prior, people ignored that. So fast forward 50 plus years, or around 50 years, and in 2002, there was a lot of research being done by TVA in the state of North Carolina, DEQ, and watershed restoration plans are being developed. And through that process, the city actually worked with what was at the time the Wetlands Restoration Program. That was a state-run program to acquire two parcels on the south side of town. One is south of Publix. The other one is right off of South Grove Street along Mud Creek, kind of across the street from those little shops on South Grove. The purpose of the purchase of those properties, and the city actually entered a memorandum of understanding with the Wetland Restoration Program to develop wetland restoration and flood mitigation projects on those sites. So that was 2002. That has not been done. So in 2021, we applied for a planning grant to basically evaluate the potential for stream, wetland, floodplain restoration, stormwater management projects on those two sites and another third site, actually the dog park at the back of Jackson Park, which the city owns and leases to the county. And we did receive that planning grant. It's a $25,000 grant, which we matched with $25,000, and we're working through that planning grant now. North Carolina, so then this year last year and this year, 2021 and 2022. So in 2021, Division of Water Infrastructure announced a grant program to fund stormwater construction projects with a total amount of $57 million for the construction grants eligible. And then in 2022, the NC Land and Water Fund, who we got our planning grant from for the initial study, announced a flood risk reduction program with $15 million available. So the city partnered with actually Mary, who was here earlier, Land to Sky, and we began to develop an application for the flood risk reduction program. And I do apologize, this is a little wordy. So this map here on the screen shows the three properties that the city owns. And basically what we're looking at through the planning study is that the city wants to, or through the planning study is to evaluate those three parcels and assess whether the acquisition of additional parcels, those are highlighted in pink there, that would facilitate solutions to water resource challenges, restoration efforts to enhance connectivity to future parks and greenway systems. And so these sites all together, they're all in close proximity. The dark blue there represents the floodway, the light blue represents the floodplain. They're all in the floodway, floodplain. As you know, the intersection of 225 and 176 floods frequently, as do the surrounding properties. And so these sites present many opportunities for ecological restoration through floodplain reconnection. A lot of the Wilson property and Brevard Church property are basically like levied off from historic dredging that happened in Mud Creek years and years ago to preserve the function of those as agricultural properties at the time. Obviously, those are not the function of those properties anymore. They sit vacant and are overgrown with invasive species. So that, we can do wetland restoration, stream restoration, riparian, which means streamside vegetation restoration, and potentially innovative stormwater projects. This is kind of an overview of the three properties, two of the properties and the potential acquisition. This is a concept plan that we have developed through the planning study. So it has two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 would be focused on the, this one does it have a pointer on it? Mm-hmm. Ah, cool. Okay, well, okay. So phase 1 would be to, I think I jumped ahead, but I'll go ahead. So phase 1 would be basically that parcel that you see on the lower left side, my left side, is the parcel that the city owns behind Publix. So the conceptual idea would be to reroute Johnson's drainage ditch, which currently goes down and around and through the Ingalls culvert and under Highway 25, and then along down South Grove, to reroute that through that site, reestablish floodplain connectivity and augment some flood storage, and then create wetlands. And then also acquire a 9-acre parcel off of South Grove Street that is basically, right now, is a just overgrown parcel. And then phase 2, so the preliminary, yes, sir.
We're allowed to reroute a waterway?
It would involve permitting, yes, but their models can be run and permitting can be done that would, the benefit here would be creating flood storage. So if you did a flood study, it'd be easy to get a no-rise because you're basically excavating land and creating place for water to go when a flood occurs. Instead of right now, it goes out in the streets and things like that. And then acquire a 9-acre parcel off of South Grove Street on basically the other side of where our conservation easement is. So preliminary cost estimates for phase 1, and this is what we submitted in our letter of intent, would be $1.4 million. Permitting and design, $200,000. The construction's the majority of that. There is property acquisition, a number plugged in for about $200,000. That's what we potentially estimate the cost of that property would be, the 9-acre parcel. And then you have, this is phase 2. So phase 2 would acquire additional it would also complete final and design permitting for the activities identified in phase 2 of the project. Again, stream, wetland, floodplain restoration activities on Brevard Church and the dog park parcel. We wouldn't be like getting rid of the dog park parcel. There's a lot of that that's just covered up in woods and kind of swampy that we could utilize. And then acquiring 15 additional acres that are adjacent to the 9-acre parcel that we discussed in phase 1. Preliminary cost estimates for that phase would be $3.3 million. Again, construction being the predominant, the biggest cost of that. And so the funding opportunities that currently exist immediately right now are the flood risk reduction program, which there's $15 million available to applicants. Basically, the purpose of that program, it's a new program that was established this year by the Land and Water Fund, is to reduce flood risk through the design, implementation, and preservation of nature-based infrastructure, which those 3 parcels present perfect opportunities for that. And there's additional consideration given to projects that deliver other ecosystem services or public benefits. And then the North Carolina Division of Water Infrastructure Stormwater Construction Grant Program has allocated $57 million in grant funds that do not require matching for the development and implementation of stormwater control measures or projects that utilize nature-based solutions. Again, the same types of projects that this would be aiming to do. So the next steps for this, we've submitted a letter of intent to North Carolina Land and Water Fund. We got some positive feedback from them a couple days ago that they feel the project aligns well with their program. We are currently having the 9-acre parcel appraised, planning to submit the DWI Stormwater Construction Grant application tonight. That we're asking for you to approve the resolution to apply for that, and then complete a 30% design for phase 1, which is what we're doing through the planning study. Some additional benefits that this project could be realized through this project. Obviously, the Acosta Trail is coming right into South Main Street, and the Brevard Church property is right across Mud Creek. And we've actually had some designs done by Kimley Horn. I believe, Brent, correct me if I'm wrong, that we could potentially go across Mud Creek with a bridge and connect. You all are familiar with the Above the Mud project that happened earlier. So these parcels are all in that same alignment and could be potential greenway connections to Jackson Park and the Oklawaha Greenway. So it creates public green space, it creates opportunities for passive recreation. Climate resiliency is obviously a benefit by creating and reconnecting floodplains and wetlands, and it provides a great opportunity for environmental education.
Question.
Yes, sir.
That walkway you just had up there, are you allowed to build those?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So that if we constructed wetlands, there could be some type of boardwalk through the wetlands. That's a very popular use, passive recreation example. So items for consideration, one would be the resolution. The feedback that we received from the flood risk reduction had to do with the phasing and where we're going to do construction in phase 2, where would that money come from, and why were the phase 1 parcel selected. A lot of that has to do with funding and what we see as the easiest targets for projects in the timeline we have. The other question, kind of that I want to present, and I did speak to John about this, is the property acquisition piece. Currently, we're looking at grant funds for that, but potentially the city wanted to consider using our funds to purchase some or one of the properties because of the benefits to this project, but also the benefits to future like greenway projects and things like that. So I realize I'm taking a long time. I do want to give a thank you to Mary Roderick. Again, she was here earlier. She was extremely helpful in developing the letter of interest, and Wildman's Engineering, who he's been working with on the planning grant side that's developed all these conceptual ideas, and we're working on developing grant applications for flood risk reduction and DWI currently. So that is the end of that presentation. The next one will go even faster.
Questions?
I think, Mayor, the only thing I want to add is, Mike is looking for creative ways. We know that the area of South Main and around Publix is always flood and it always will flood, but I think he's looking for creative solutions to lessen that impact. No promises at this point, but I think I commend him for at least looking for options to try to reduce a Mother Nature problem that is going to be very hard to make go away.
Yeah, this isn't the silver bullet, but, I think there's a lot of opportunity in that area for restoration, floodplain reconnectivity, wetland restoration that would have benefits beyond stormwater and water quality management. So, all right, next presentation, please.
Oh, we got a
sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Resolution. I apologize.
Okay. All right. Any discussion or emotion?
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council adopt a resolution to apply for funding through the DWI Stormwater Construction Grant Program for the Lower Mud Creek Floodplain Restoration Project.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Ayes have it, motion carries, and one step further on that one. All right, now it's the Name the Creek campaign.
Yes, ma'am. So this is Sullivan Park, the creek that runs through Sullivan Park. Currently did not have a name. Hopefully after tonight it will have a name. So the Name That Creek campaign, Brooklyn Creek. So Sullivan Park Stream Restoration, we applied for funding to restore the stream in Sullivan Park, the 800 linear feet basically from Ash Street all the way to the wooded area. We received a grant from North Carolina 319 project in the amount of $240,000. We're waiting to hear back about another grant for an additional $65,000 that would complete the budget for that project. And basically, it would enhance natural ecosystem resiliency, improve water quality, and provide a nature-based community recreational and education opportunities for the folks in the Green Meadows and Ash Street community. So as part of this, we always try and do public education and outreach and get as much as possible, get the community involved in the project. And actually RiverLink, a nonprofit in Asheville, has a program called Name That Creek campaign. And so basically it's an initiative where communities can submit name suggestions for an unnamed creek and vote for official names. So this name would then be on all maps that are made by the USGS, and it becomes an official name of the creek, not just the Hendersonville calls it Brooklyn Creek. So the goal of that program is to foster connection and sense of shared stewardship to our local waterways with the communities that surround those waterways. And so in July of 2022, RiverLink, RiverLink staff worked with Hendersonville residents to select the name Brooklyn Creek for the unnamed stream that flows through Sullivan Park and into Mud Creek. So these were the two names that were suggested. Brooklyn Creek, in the earlier, it was unnamed stream. It was a destination for play and relaxation for residents of the historic African American community known as Brooklyn before those people were displaced by urban renewal, which created the Green Meadows area. And there's an article in the Laurel of Asheville about folks that used to live right next to the stream, and the stream was very clean and a place for people to interact with the water. So by naming the stream Brooklyn Creek, the history of the displaced community and their connection to the waterway can be honored and shared. The other name that was suggested is Cold Spring Creek. So the creek does outlet at Locust Street, right past Edwards Park, future Edwards Park. And, Cold Spring Historic District in Hendersonville, that's the area around there. And it was colonial revival ranch style homes dating 1910 to 1953, which were built in that subdivision. And that retains a lot of the architectural integrity, and the name aims to complement that designation. Those were the two names that were suggested. So RiverLink took those two names and put out a survey to the community around the people that live around the stream, and a poll was created, and Brooklyn Creek received almost 70% of the vote. And I don't know why these are doing this, but once that name is chosen by popular vote, basically the next step is to receive approval from the governing board, from City Council, and then RiverLink will send an application to the USGS Board of Geographical Names, and the creek will then be named Brooklyn Creek, and that will be the official name of the creek. And so the resolution before you for this is that you would approve the name of the creek as Brooklyn Creek, and it will be passed along to the USGS and made official. Any questions or feedback?
Questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Discussion or a motion, please?
Madam Mayor, I move the City Council approve the resolution approving RiverLink's application to U.S. Geological Survey to name a creek Brooklyn Creek.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of naming it Brooklyn Creek, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. All right, can let them know to send that paperwork off. Okay, next we have a resolution to apply for funding for the Dana Area Water Improvement Project. Mr. Detweiler.
Mayor, council, not only am I last, but I have to follow Mike. So, but we've got one presentation for two agenda items, so hopefully that helps out. So the city has worked with the DEQ's Division of Water Infrastructure for a number of years. We've had several projects funded through the Division of Water Infrastructure, mostly state revolving fund projects. The recent example is the French Broad River intake has been funded through DWI. We learned of some grant funding that was available through DWI earlier in the spring. We did not have enough time to put together an application for their spring round. However, they have a fall round that the applications are due on September 30th. And so this particular grant funding is capped at $15 million. It's ARPA money, so it's capped at $15 million total. per applicant, and in our case, that's been reduced to $10 million because we received $5 million through previous ARPA direct appropriation, which is funding wastewater treatment plant projects, the UV disinfection, and the wall at the aeration basin. So this particular grant funding is typically made available for distressed or at-risk funding, utilities that are in distressed or at-risk funding in those categories. We are not, we have a very viable utility, but we do have areas that within our service area, or potential service area, that are considered disadvantaged, underserved areas. So the state made this particular grant eligible. To be eligible, 75% of a particular project area has to connect existing residents to within these disadvantaged, underserved areas to water or wastewater, replacing on-site water, wells or septic systems. And an added bonus, which isn't typical with these type of in past loans, especially the connection and tap-on fees, i.e. Connecting those systems, abandoning wells, doing work on the private property, that's all included as part of the grant, which makes things a lot easier for the residents. And so the state had established these disadvantaged, underserved areas. They're based on census blocks, and the potentially underserved block group on the map that I'll show you on the next slide it includes the following demographics. Share of non-whites and Hispanic or Latino of any race is over 50%, or at least 10% higher than the county or state share. And the share of population experiencing poverty is over 20%, or at least 5% higher than the county or state share. So again, these are based on census block, and you can kind of see, basically within the city limits. So gray represents city limits. This area, this is the only area. The blue are the underserved areas. And so basically the only area within town is kind of on the south side of downtown, east and west of there. And unfortunately for us, and for this particular grant, those areas are already served with water and sewer. So we started to look elsewhere and for potential project areas. And we determined there might be a couple of opportunities. One would be to extend water into the Dana community to address potentially contaminated wells. And a second area would be to extend sewer into the Barker Heights area to address failing septic systems. And we put together some maps and showed the existing and proposed infrastructure, underserved areas, failing septic areas, which was data that we got from Henderson County, from the health department, and while sampling information that we've gotten from DEQ and their Asheville staff or Swannanoa staff. We recently met with DEQ, those same staff, and they feel that both of these projects seem like a great fit. So what are the projects? So this is the Dana Area Water Improvements Project. The kind of purplish pink line would represent new water. The blue, you can see the blue lines all around. This is existing water that we have kind of all around this area. However, this particular area and the red dots are just addresses. That's from the county's address layer. So this project would entail water line along Dana, a portion on Ridge, on Old Dana Road, and on a portion of Howard Gap. And so the next slide I'll kind of show you. This particular area would have an added bonus in not only having the potential to get folks off of potentially contaminated wells. These projects were identified in our water distribution system master plan back in 2017, and subsequently several of the project areas have been placed in our water and sewer CIP, which is in this year's budget, the fiscal year 23 budget, which is where this came from. So the Dana Water Extension is this area along Dana Road, and then Howard Gap north end is this area. So, yes?
Just to clarify, you mentioned potentially damaged wells.
Yes.
But we don't have that on the table. Just whoever's listening, we don't have like Academy Road situation at all here.
We do not. So on this slide, I'm glad you brought that up, Councilman Smith. This particular map shows, and you see this concentration of dots here. So these were well sample locations or wells that were sampled by the state over the last several years, I think going back to 2009 or 2010, kind of all in this area, but you see this concentration up here. This is the Academy Road area. So that was a particularly higher hazard contaminant. It was dieldrin, and you know, it was a joint effort between the city and the county. You know, we were able to get 3 grants. And I believe the county applied for 1 or 2 of those on behalf of the project, and we were able to get those folks on public water. These, the areas, you know, these blue dots out here and in surrounding areas, those have shown that there is some well contamination. Oftentimes it's not above the state limit, but it's nitrates, which are kind of indicative of failing septic tanks. It could be animal waste, but basically it tends to be some sort of waste, human and or animal, that is making its way into the, I want to say aquifer, but we don't have classic aquifers, but into the folks' wells. This map, you know, along the purplish pink line, we would serve approximately 200 existing parcels that are currently on well water with public water, if they would choose to connect. And again, you know, if we got the grant, the connection would be paid for by the grant. This consists of nearly 6 miles of water line. Approximate project cost, which we've been refining the last several weeks, is $6.5 million, and the Water and Sewer Advisory Council, Councilman Smith has kind of seen parts of this presentation. Water and Sewer Advisory Council endorsed the grant application at their August 15th meeting, just earlier, mid last month. We are in the process of obtaining letters of support and other useful information, i.e., you know, all of the various sample data and everything that we would need to put together a good application. We're getting that from both Henderson County, the Health Department has offered to provide a letter of support, and then the regional office for DEQ. Please stop me at any time. I'm going fast, not quite as fast as Mike, but I can't talk that fast. Barker Heights sewer improvements. So this would be this is the sewer project that we identified, and that screen, this one looks a lot better than this one. So that the purplish line would be new sewer, proposed sewer. All of these surrounding areas. All these surrounding areas. All of this green is existing sewer. Again, the dots represent existing addresses, existing buildings, that for the most part, there are some chunks here that have connected to sewer, kind of, you know, along this area, but for the most part, almost all of this area is on septic. And so what does this pink area represent? The pink area is data that we got from Henderson County back when we did our sewer collection system master plan in 2019. This is what they considered kind of a failing septic area, or an area that has you know, a good concentration of septic systems that are failing for residents. And then the blue area you've seen on the other slides, this is the underserved area that is provided based on the census block.
Brett, are there any public waterways near Barker Heights?
Yeah, so, so basically you've got Johnson Ditch is up here, Mud Creek is up here, Bat Fork is over here. There are several unnamed tributaries that are kind of, especially up in this area, the area tends to drain this way, which is why, you know, this is, part of this is the Jackson Park line that we put in several years ago, like 8 or 9 years ago now. But basically, yes, you know, there is surface water in the area. You know, we would, you know, it's actually on the slide. I was going to talk about it a little bit, but Mountain True, we've actually reached out to Mountain True, and they had actually provided us this information in the past, but they've actually been doing sampling out here. So Hartwell Carson provided some of their data and anecdotally said that this area, especially what he called downstream of Barker Heights, has one of the highest E. coli readings that they've gotten in the, you know, they've been sampling kind of all around town here in the last couple of years.
Can you explain what failing septic systems mean?
So that's basically when folks are out of options. Either they've done repairs on their septic systems, you know, and a septic system is an on-site sewer treatment. So those of us that are on public sewer, you know, we flush our toilets and water runs down the drain. It goes out through a sewer lateral out into the street, and for the most part usually flows by gravity to a treatment plant. And, you know, obviously our plant is up in the Balfour area, but for on-site treatment systems, septic systems, there's a tank. Usually there's a tank, and then there's a leach field. And the leach field basically allows the water to the wastewater. It gets held in the tank for a bit, and then it gets slowly released into this the leach field, which is basically just piping in people's yards that kind of allows the waste to kind of my thoughts are escaping me, but basically it gets filtered out into the earth over time. And what happens when there are failing septic systems is usually it's the leach field. Folks only have so much space. If you're familiar with Barker Heights area, most of the lots are not very large, so people can't just build another leach field. You know, larger lots, people can build an additional leach field or whatever and discontinue use of the old one. Oftentimes that's not an option for people here, so people have to get creative, and which is usually very expensive. They'll have to build basically on-site treatment systems, you know, which are very, very expensive. And sometimes, you know, there are no options. You know, eventually, I don't think this happens very much, but eventually in other areas, I've heard in other parts of the county, or country, not county, but other parts of the country, you know, eventually it could lead to, you know, properties being condemned because it's a health hazard. But basically, you know, this particular area, the reason it was identified is there have been a lot of septic systems over the years. You know, I should have mentioned that septic systems only last so long. So, and a lot of it depends on the soil that they're building on, the in situ soil. So, so basically.
Sorry, what does it mean when someone has to pump their septic?
That's the tank. So basically when, and I grew up in a household that had a septic system that needed to be pumped every year. And it was often quite embarrassing because it would happen when I was coming off of the school bus in middle school. So I have vivid memories of the truck out on the driveway. Yeah. So basically, you know, the septic trucks have to come in.
Off the bus and walk down the street.
Yeah, it's not my house. It's not my house. Well, a guy's eating a sandwich and pumping out the. Sorry. Painful memories. So anyway, wow, I completely got off topic. So basically these septic tanks have to be pumped every once in a while, and even when they're working properly, they have to be pumped. And then when the system's not working, not functioning, they have to be pumped even more often. So, we've heard from folks that have had to get their septic systems pumped, every couple weeks or every month. And
That's expensive too,
yeah,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Several $100s usually. So this particular project, this is kind of showing that overall project area, or the 614 approximately existing parcels on septic. It would consist of nearly 8 miles of gravity sewer, which is a lot, obviously. You saw the purple lines on that last sheet, and I can go back to anything if you want. Approximate project cost of $18.5 million. And we are working with Henderson County Health Department, DQ, their regional office in Mountain True, like I'd said just a second ago, to get other information, letters of support, and that type of thing. That would all help for an application. I'm sorry.
The Barker Heights was about twice as big as that blue area. Does that present any problems?
Yeah, so basically we would have to prove in the application, how I mentioned earlier that 75% of the project area has to be within that area in order to qualify.
It looked like 75.
And it's not. We would, whoops, I'm going the wrong way. I did this last time I presented. Very good observation. So basically, we've talked to the DWI staff about this, and if we could make a strong enough case that, and this would be in conjunction with, some letters and other information that we get from the county health department and others, and maybe some of the sampling, we could potentially make the case that, this area should be, included in the overall project area because it would be considered underserved. They told us we'd have to provide information like, all the houses were built around the same time, probably do a little bit of demographic, provide some of that research and everything along with the application. So yeah, that would definitely be a challenge. And there are several items to consider. That's actually one of the items to consider. And as I stated previously, we would only have $10 million in grants that could be available, or, in our case, in the city's case. So the Dana Water Project, that estimate was 6.5. Barker Heights, 18.5. Obviously, that's a little more than $10 million. So we asked DWI staff about, okay, well, what do we do? They liked both of the projects. And one of their lead reviewers of these particular applications said that they would recommend applying for all the funds that we need for both projects. And if we're able to secure grants for both projects, we would have the ability to either reduce the scope or, I referenced the SRF loans before, or we could potentially, the portion that is not funded via grant would be, we could get an SRF loan, a low interest loan, just half the bond rate. That's currently about 1.7%. Or there could be other potential means. They mentioned we could delay, we could say we get the grant funding for a project. We could say, okay, well, we've got this. Your next round, we're going to apply for CDBG funding. Or some other source. So there are a number of different options. And this, Mayor, to your point, we were kind of thinking through some of this. We could, because obviously you want to think through it even before you apply, even if the decision is made to apply for everything, we would definitely want to keep in mind what a reduced scope would look like. So what you see on the left side, the phase 1, would be kind of serving that underserved area and focusing in on that. Still quite expensive, $9.8 million, 350 connections, 4 miles of sewer. And then the second phase, or another project potentially, or we could only do one project, but that other portion would be about $8.7 million. Which accounts for the 18.5. Dana area, we also looked at that, say we get both, maybe we should look at some options either way. Dana's a little less clear-cut. Option one, 6 miles of, sorry about the slide, should be ductile iron water, not gravity sewer. And approximately 200 connections for option one. Project cost is $6.5 million. Option two, 100 connections, 5.5 miles of water line, and approximate cost of $5.6 million. So, lots to think about. And so what we're hoping for is, there are 2 agenda items, 2 resolutions, 1 resolution for Dana, 1 resolution for Barker Heights, just basically allowing us to, or approving us to apply for the funding. And then, staff has kind of talked about, and this was brought up at the advisory council meeting, asking for support from Henderson County Board of Commissioners, ideally in the form of resolutions. I should note, it's not on a slide, but I should note that per the Mud Creek Agreement that was executed in the year 2000, the city does have to request any extensions into unincorporated area have to be approved by the county commissioners.
Would you need that last bullet before you apply, or can you include that after you apply?
There's no requirement that it's included with the application.
So, could you amend your application to include that letter of support if you can't get it before September 30th?
No, you can't amend the application. Once the applications are in, they're in.
Okay. That's fine.
We would be applying, at least the way we're looking at it, we would be applying for the grant. So
I got you.
Henderson County would not have to sign on or anything like that, but it is, and I should have mentioned this earlier, I don't have any of the, these maps don't show any of the political boundaries or anything, but I can tell you I've got some notes on here. So the area one, actually I should have stuck on that. So the phase one area, that is about 24% of that is in the city limits. 43% is in the ETJ, and 33% of it is in Henderson County, outside the ETJ, in county jurisdiction. Phase two is 17% in the city of Hendersonville, 83% within the ETJ. So this area is almost all of it's in the ETJ, for what that's worth. So that's the presentation. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Further questions?
Sorry, I just got to picture you getting off the bus. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. It's late. I'm sorry.
Cousin Eddie.
That was before Cousin Eddie, so maybe that.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, boy. Well, if there's no discussion, there are 2 separate motions here, since we're talking about both F and G.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council adopt the resolution by the City Council to apply for funding for the Dana Area Water Improvements Project.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of the resolution for the Dana Area Water Project, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Motion carries, and that application can go forward.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council adopt the resolution by the City Council to apply for funding for the Barker Heights Sanitary Sewer Project.
Is there any discussion? If Not, those in favor of the resolution for the Barker Heights Sewer Project, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say no. Ayes have it. And that also carries, and that application can move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, city council comments.
Okay, I know it's late, so I'm gonna go fast. The first comment is the Kiwanis Annual Pancake Breakfast is back in person tomorrow morning. So I know we'll be here late, but I have to be there at 6:30. So it would be nice if everyone else came to say hi. And Tony's gonna be making the pancakes, so that's a win-win for everybody. 7 to 10 at First Baptist. Kids under 6 are free. And then the other thing is, still on the Kiwanis bandwagon, the Kiwanis splash pad, a couple months ago, I mentioned that we received a grant from the TDA for $25,000. And I have a long list of other grants that we are going to be pursuing for that project, but it would be very helpful if we had a permanent location for it. So since we are delaying the Dogwood project, I would like to keep the splash pad moving and propose that we look into moving its location to Tom's Park, which is right next to the Whitmire Center. There is some research that we will have to do to see if it will work, because that park is in the floodplain and how all that will work. But I would like to propose moving it to that location, if everyone is amicable to this.
Do we need to make that decision tonight, or can we get some further research to find out?
We can get some further research. I wanted more to bring it up so that we were okay with Tom and John spending time doing that research.
Okay.
We're happy to
All
look at we're happy to do that research.
okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Not. City manager report?
No report, ma'am.
Okay. Closed session. Do you want to have a closed session for an update from the attorney? She said it could be put off to next month if necessary.
We're already here. We might as well just do it.
Go ahead and do it.
You're
Okay.
just the one talking about you gotta go serve pancakes tomorrow.
I know, but I want to hear what Angie has to say.
Okay, someone might make a motion to go into closed session.
Madam Mayor, I move that City Council enter closed session pursuant to NCGS 143-318.11A1 and 3 to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to the law of this state or of the United States or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the general statutes, and to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body.
Is there any discussion? Not. Those in favor of entering closed